Chapter 800. In the Flourishing Moon restaurant, Chu Xiu had been waiting there for a long time. According to Lu Yu's information, Zhong Ping was already lurking in the Flourishing Moon restaurant. Chu Xiu waited in the Flourishing Moon restaurant for about 2 hours before Yuan Tianfang arrived. He deliberately left Chu Xiu hanging. "Chu Xiu, boy, what do you want to say by asking I to come here? Is there anything that can't be said in the Jianghu hall?" Yuan Tianfang sat opposite Chu Xiu with a look of contempt. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Senior Yuan, it's true that I killed your disciple, but it was Xing Situ who wanted to kill me first. If someone wants to kill me, of course I'll kill them. I didn't do anything wrong in that feud." Yuan Tianfang sneered, "You, Chu Xiu, didn't do anything wrong, but Xing Situ was my disciple. His disciple was killed and his master came to take revenge. That's not wrong either, is it?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Revenge breeds revenge, when will it ever end? My position in the Hidden Devil clan has been established. Unless you want to completely fall out with the Hidden Devil clan, you can't kill me." Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly and said, "Position? Chu Xiu, you're so naive. Do you really think your position is invulnerable? Even if Wei Shuya came, he wouldn't dare say that." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Then Senior Yuan, you really don't want to reconcile?" Yuan Tianfang said coldly, "I've said it before. As long as you, Chu Xiu, cripple your own martial arts, then I won't pursue it. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about." Just as the atmosphere between the two of them was at daggers drawn, Zhong Ping, who was disguised as a waiter, walked in. He lowered his head and placed the wine and dishes in front of Chu Xiu and Yuan Tianfang. Zhong Ping's disguise was quite good. It was unknown what method he used, but he managed to seal all of his power. Even Chu Xiu did not notice the slightest leakage of gang qi. However, his disguise was very ridiculous in the eyes of Chu Xiu, who was meticulous, and Yuan Tianfang, who was an old monster in Jianghu. He could hide his strength, but he could not hide his killing intent. He could not hide the habits he had developed over the years of practicing martial arts. Not to mention Chu Xiu and Yuan Tianfang, even Lu Yu could see it. At this moment, Zhong Ping was also very nervous, and his hands were even trembling slightly. To be honest, he didn't expect Yuan Tianfang to tag along. His target was not Yuan Tianfang, but Chu Xiu. But if he gave up this opportunity, he didn't know when he would have to wait. Therefore, he could only make a bet. He bet that Chu Xiu would eat something first, and that he would attack immediately after he was poisoned. Moreover, he also heard that Yuan Tianfang and Chu Xiu had always been at odds. The two sides had a grudge against each other for killing their disciples. If he took action, would Yuan Tianfang hit him when he was down? With this purpose, Zhong Ping stared at Chu Xiu and watched Chu Xiu pick up the cup. But before Chu Xiu could drink it, Yuan Tianfang suddenly threw the wine cup, swept away all the wine and dishes on the table, and shouted angrily, "Chu Xiu! You actually want to kill me? It's fine if you use the same method to deal with Fang Jinwu, but you dare to use it against I. Do you really think I dare not kill you?" Yuan Tianfang moved his hand and directly grabbed Zhong Ping's neck. He didn't give Zhong Ping a chance to speak at all. He directly strangled him and threw him to the side. Monstrous devil qi bloomed from his hand, directly forming a huge devil qi vortex in midair. The giant hand stretched out from it, sealed the space, and went straight for Chu Xiu. The moment the giant hand of devil qi appeared, the top floor of the entire Flourishing Moon restaurant suddenly exploded, causing the people downstairs and on the long street to be shocked. Even the people in the palace stared at the two of them. Yuan Tianfang was really bold to the extreme, and also extremely angry to the extreme. He completely ignored the rules and actually made a move in the city. The lethality of an expert in the true fire refining realm was too great. Therefore, at this level, unless it was a battle to exterminate the opponent's family, both sides would try to avoid fierce battles in the city as much as possible. With their strength, it was not a problem to destroy a huge city in a battle. Chu Xiu sat still. Traces of bloodlines flew around his body, and those bloodlines finally turned into a human-shaped blood shadow. Some were holding a sword, some were holding a Buddhist seal, and some were flashing with blood-colored lightning. The blood shadows flew all over the sky and directly strangled the giant devil Qi hand. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. This was the first time he had used the blood shadow great technique, and the effect was unexpectedly good. Although this was just a casual attack from Yuan Tianfang, the opponent was, after all, an existence in the true fire refining realm. It was not easy for Chu Xiu to block it without hurting himself. Lu Jiang, he said proudly in Chu Xiu's mind, how about it? My blood shadow great technique is good, right? It's a pity that I only collected the blood of a few experts in the heaven and earth mysterious realm. If you can collect 70 or 80, you can push this technique to the peak. Chu Xiu did not respond to Lu Jiang's boasting. Chu Xiu had just used this technique, and he had actually discovered its biggest weakness. It was not in the technique itself, but in its potential. The key point of the blood shadow great technique was not to condense these blood shadows, but to find the blood of those powerhouses and nourish the martial art's true meaning in it. But how many powerhouses in the heaven and earth mysterious realm were there? That was something that could be counted on two hands. 70 or 80, Chu Xiu might not be able to live for those years. Moreover, Chu Xiu was in the real pellet state or the true fire refining realm. The blood shadow great technique was very useful. However, once Chu Xiu broke through to the heaven and earth mysterious realm, would the blood shadow great technique that only had the martial art's true meaning of the powerhouses in the heaven and earth mysterious realm be useful? It would probably be vulnerable. Therefore, the biggest shortcoming of this technique was that its growth was limited. It should be said that this technique had no potential at all. That was also Lu Jiang's unique trait. The techniques he created with the demonic blood technique were almost always the kind of techniques that were powerful in the same realm, but had low growth potential. At this time, Yuan Tianfang also looked at Chu Xiu with a surprised expression. Blood God demonic technique. You actually know the blood God demonic technique. In fact, Yuan Tianfang also knew this cultivation method, but what he knew was only the tip of the iceberg. What he taught Duanjiao was this incomplete technique. He didn't expect Chu Xiu to know the complete version of the blood God demonic technique. However, Yuan Tianfang was not surprised for too long. He said coldly in an instant, so what if you know the blood God demonic technique? Even if you have the inheritance of Patriarch Dugu, I will not spare you today. Chu Xiu hurriedly said, Senior Yuan, there must be a misunderstanding. I used the same technique twice, and it was still so obvious. Why would I do such a stupid thing? Take a closer look at the person who died in your hands. Yuan Tianfang was stunned. He turned around to look at Zhong Ping's corpse. With a wave of his hand, Gang Qi directly shattered the disguise on Zhong Ping's body, revealing the appearance of a monk. It's a monk from the Great Light Temple? Even though Zhong Ping was already dead, there were still some traces of cultivation techniques left on his body. Yuan Tianfang had interacted with the monks from the Great Light Temple in his early years, so he could easily recognize them. However, Yuan Tianfang didn't understand why the monks from the Great Light Temple wanted to kill him. Moreover, they used such a despicable method. Chu Xiu smiled bitterly and said, Senior Yuan, I'm sorry. The monks from the Great Light Temple must have come for me. I've always had enmity with the monks from the Great Light Temple. It's normal for them to want to kill me. Senior Yuan, you've been implicated by me this time. Yuan Tianfang frowned and looked around. With a cold snort, he turned around and left. Chu Xiu had already lowered himself so much. Moreover, there were so many people watching. At this time, it was not good for Yuan Tianfang to continue making a move. That would be too blatant. He also somewhat regretted his hesitation just now. If he had continued to make a move just now and pretended not to know who the person who poisoned him was, then even if he killed Chu Xiu on the spot, he would still be able to answer to the hidden devil lineage. It was just a misunderstanding. Couldn't it be a manslaughter? Could it be that Wei Shuya would make him pay with his life? However, now that he had made a move, he had already demolished the entire top floor of the Flourishing Moon restaurant. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he no longer had a chance to continue making a move. After Yuan Tianfang was released, the smile on Chu Xiu's face disappeared. He walked downstairs and said to the shopkeeper of the Flourishing Moon restaurant, "Later, I'll go to the Jianghu hall to get the money. Consider it compensation for your losses." The shopkeeper of the Flourishing Moon restaurant hurriedly wanted to say no. He did not dare to go to a place like the Jianghu hall to get the money. However, before he could say anything, Chu Xiu had already disappeared. In the alley next to the Flourishing Moon restaurant, Lu Yu had long been waiting there. Chu Xiu said to Lu Yu in a deep voice, "Use the fastest speed to spread this news to the Northern Yen martial arts circle. This should not be difficult for your wind-sweeping tower. Moreover, the focus of the publicity is not the conflict between Yuan Tianfang and me, but the fact that he killed a disciple of the Great Light Temple." Lu Yu nodded in understanding. He did not ask much and went straight to deal with this matter. Lu Yu was considered very tactful. He knew what to ask and what not to ask. Now that such a big thing had happened, it was already big news. However, Lu Yu's intuition told him that Chu Xiu should still make a move. In just 2 days, this news had already spread throughout the entire Northern Yen martial arts circle. In fact, it was just the death of a martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm. Even if the other party was from the Great Light Temple, it would not attract the attention of others. However, the selling point of this news was not Zhong Ping, but Yuan Tianfang. This old devil had harmed the Eastern Qi martial arts circle and the Western Chu martial arts circle in the past. He seemed to have a grudge against Taoist priests, and almost all the people he killed were Taoist priests. After so many years of not appearing in the martial arts circle, this old devil had now come to the Northern Yen martial arts circle. Instead of killing Taoist priests, he killed monks. This caused the martial arts forces in the Northern Yen martial arts circle to feel insecure. Compared to Chu Xiu, they were obviously more afraid of Yuan Tianfang. Chu Xiu always had a purpose in everything he did. Surrender or die, at least there was a choice. However, when it was this old devil, he killed completely according to his mood. Chapter 801. Zhong Ping's corpse was sent back to the Great Light Temple. Lu Yu had sent someone to send it back. Su Yan looked at Zhong Ping's corpse expressionlessly. In the end, he let out a deep sigh. Zhong Ping was a disciple of the Vajrayard, and he was also the disciple he thought the most highly of. Perhaps it was because of his background, but Zhong Ping was more hardworking than ordinary disciples. This was because he knew that only the Great Light Temple was his way out. Without the Great Light Temple, he would return to the Feng family's environment of scheming and scheming. When news of the Feng family's annihilation spread, it was Su Yan who personally persuaded him to temporarily let go of these grudges. At the moment, the relationship between the orthodox and demonic paths was sensitive. The Great Light Temple could not possibly fight to the death with Chu Xiu because of Zhong Ping's personal grudges. At that time, Zhong Ping had agreed. Su Yan thought that he had already let go of everything. After all, the Feng family did not treat Zhong Ping very well. In the end, who would have thought that Zhong Ping would secretly go down the mountain to seek revenge? During this period of time, Abbot Su Ci had been in seclusion ever since the great battle between the orthodox and demonic paths. Su Yun had also gone to seclusion with Su Jing. The two of them seemed to be working together to predict something. Hence, Su Yun had left the matter of Chu Xiu to Su Yan to handle. After much difficulty, he had reached an agreement with Chu Xiu for 3 months. Su Yan still had to deal with other matters of the Great Light Temple. He was so busy that he did not pay attention to what Zhong Ping had done. Hence, Su Yan blamed himself. Zhong Ping's death was partly due to his negligence. Chu Xiu. The Great Light Temple will not let this go. Su Yan growled in a low voice. Even with his upbringing, he could no longer suppress the rage in his heart at this moment. He had just reached an agreement with Chu Xiu for 3 months. Initially, he thought that the Great Light Temple would be quieter after 3 months. In the end, who would have thought that Chu Xiu would kill a disciple of the Great Light Temple? What did he mean by this? At that moment, the Vajrayard disciple said weakly, "Master, that senior brother Zhong Ping was not killed by Chu Xiu." Su Yan was stunned. What? He wasn't killed by Chu Xiu? Didn't he go down the mountain to seek revenge on Chu Xiu? If it wasn't Chu Xiu, even if it was Chu Xiu's subordinates, the result would be the same as Chu Xiu's. The disciple said, "Senior brother Zhong Ping died in the hands of Yuan Tianfang, the 10 Directions Old Devil, who was a true fire spirit refinement realm expert of the Hidden Devil clan." Yuan Tianfang? Why does he want to kill Zhong Ping? Su Yan was puzzled. The disciple explained, "It's like this. Senior brother Zhong Ping wanted to use poison to weaken Chu Xiu's strength. However, no one expected that Chu Xiu was not poisoned. Instead, he was discovered by Yuan Tianfang. Maybe Yuan Tianfang thought that senior brother Zhong Ping wanted to harm him, so he was killed by Yuan Tianfang before he could explain." Su Yan frowned and said, "Are you sure that Chu Xiu didn't spread this on purpose?" The disciple said, "I've already asked around." Back then, many people witnessed this scene. It was Yuan Tianfang who did it. It wasn't deliberately spread. Su Yan rubbed his head. He felt a headache. One Chu Xiu was troublesome enough. He didn't expect Yuan Tianfang to appear. If attacking Chu Xiu was troublesome, then attacking Yuan Tianfang was no longer troublesome. It was simply courting death. Su Ci, Su Yun, and Su Jing were in closed-door cultivation. If he disturbed them because of a personal grudge of a disciple named Zong, then he really didn't know his priorities. Therefore, Su Yan could only sigh deeply. He sat cross-legged in front of Zhong Ping's corpse and recited scriptures. Finally, he said in a low voice, "Go, bury Zhong Ping's corpse in the Bodhi forest at the back of the mountain." A few disciples had just carried Zhong Ping's corpse away when a disciple came to report that Chu Xiu had come to visit. Su Yan's frown deepened when he heard those 2 words. What is he doing here? Although Zhong Ping didn't die at the hands of Chu Xiu, his death was inextricably linked to Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu hadn't destroyed the Feng family, how could Zhong Ping have gone down the mountain to take revenge? Moreover, Su Yan hated Chu Xiu's ruthless methods to the point that the roots of his teeth itched. While the Great Light Temple was dealing with the moon-worshipping cult, Chu Xiu ran amok throughout the northern Yan. He killed wantonly and had no scruples. After the matter with the Great Light Temple was over, the losses on both sides became extremely great. Only the Hidden Devil lineage didn't suffer any losses. Moreover, Chu Xiu also rose to fame during that battle and became the #1 person among the younger generation of the demonic path. He was no longer so easy to deal with. Chu Xiu was right. It wasn't that the Great Light Temple couldn't tolerate sand in their eyes, but it depended on whether the sand was big enough. The small sand had basically been crushed by the Great Light Temple, but Chu Xiu was no longer sand. He was more like a rock with edges. Su Yan thought for a moment and said, "Bring Chu Xiu in." In front of the Great Light Temple's mountain gate, Chu Xiu was leisurely admiring the scenery outside. The Great Light Temple was majestic and spectacular. He was at the peak of the snowy mountain. At a glance, he could see all the mountains and rivers. Of course, there were some areas that didn't match. There were some small dots around the Great Light Temple. These small dots were the forces that Chu Xiu had thrown to dig holes around the Great Light Temple. They were still digging tirelessly, waiting to dig out the last place where the treasures were hidden. Standing here, Chu Xiu finally understood how the warriors of the Great Light Temple felt. With this group of people around, it was indeed an eyesore. The few young disciples of the Great Light Temple who were guarding the door looked at Chu Xiu with disgust and vigilance. They didn't know what this notorious demonic path murderer was doing at their Great Light Temple. However, when the news that Su Yan had allowed Chu Xiu to enter came from inside, these disciples who were guarding the door were even more shocked. A demon whose hands were stained with blood was actually qualified to enter the Great Light Temple? However, their master had given the order, so they could only bring Chu Xiu in reluctantly. Along the way, Chu Xiu was also carefully observing. The Great Light Temple was able to pass down its legacy for tens of thousands of years without any signs of decline. Firstly, it proved that the Great Light Temple's legacy was indeed powerful. Secondly, it proved that the Great Light Temple really had a way of nurturing its disciples. Along the way, Chu Xiu met many young disciples of the Great Light Temple. Even if these disciples had just entered and had not started practicing martial arts, they were all full of vigor. Even if these disciples had slightly weaker potential, their future achievements would be stronger than those warriors who grew up in an environment of scheming and plotting against each other since young. Su Yan brought Chu Xiu into a monastery, where he was waiting for him. Seeing Chu Xiu enter, Su Yan frowned and said, "Chu Xiu, what are you doing here? Aren't you afraid that you'll be able to enter the Great Light Temple, but not be able to leave?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "Master Su Yan even dares to come to the fluttering snow city in the far north to see me, so why wouldn't I dare to come to the Great Light Temple to see you?" Su Yan said exasperatedly, "Speak, why did you come to my Great Light Temple? But if you can't give me a good reason, then you'll have to put in a lot of effort if you want to leave." Chu Xiu put away his joking tone and said in a deep voice, "Regarding the death of your esteemed temple's disciple, I feel that it's a great pity." Su Yan laughed coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, there's no need to say such hypocritical words. You should know Zong Ping's identity. He came here to kill you, so what are you feeling pity for? Shouldn't you be applauding and cheering?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "To others, perhaps I am such a person, but I, Chu Xiu, am not so petty. This is how the martial world is. If I don't kill, others will kill me. I've wiped out the Feng clan and achieved my goal, so I don't regret it. Zong Ping dared to assassinate me for a clan that did not treat him well. Although it was a narrow escape, he still dared to make a move. This is courage. Such a courageous young man, even if he was my enemy, even if I killed him, I would still praise him. This is not contradictory. Master Su Yan, don't think of people as so evil. A person's death is like an extinguished lamp. Respecting your opponent is also respecting yourself at the same time. Those who insist on slicing their enemies into 1,000 pieces and grinding their bones to dust are all perverts." When Chu Xiu said these imposing words, Lu Jianghu almost went crazy with laughter. This guy actually had the cheek to say that he was magnanimous? Who knew how Zong Ping had been schemed to death? Zong Ping probably did not know until his death that his death was not an accident. Furthermore, Lu Jianghu also discovered that the greatest difference between Chu Xiu and Dugu Weiwei was not strength but that he, Chu Xiu, was much more shameless than the church master. He did not even blink when he lied in front of others. Su Yan looked at Chu Xiu in astonishment. It seemed like he had not expected Chu Xiu to say such a thing. However, Su Yan was rather open-minded. He knew that the righteous Dao was the righteous Dao, and the demonic Dao was the demonic Dao. Although they were enemies, they could not deny a person just because the other party was of the demonic Dao. For example, Wei Shuya of the 9 heavenly mountains, 5 great heavenly demons, the Jade-Face heavenly demon who had bewitched thousands of girls in the martial world. Su Yan admired that person's courage when facing thousands of people was worthy of his admiration. Although Su Yan wished for nothing more than for Wei Shuya to die earlier, that way, the hidden demon lineage would have one less expert, one who was clear-headed and rational. Su Yan's tone softened a little as he said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. What exactly do you want by coming here?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "I'm here to help your Great Light Temple take revenge." "Yuan Tianfang, do you want to kill him?" Su Yan was shocked. He had not expected Chu Xiu to say such a thing. However, Su Yan then snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, you're speaking nonsense in my Great Light Temple. Do you really not want to leave?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm not speaking nonsense. Yuan Tianfang and I have a grudge against each other for killing my disciple. Furthermore, he stole my martial suppression hall. It's normal for me to want to kill him, isn't it?" Su Yan frowned and said, "But Yuan Tianfang is one of your hidden demon lineage's own people." The corner of Chu Xiu's mouth curled up into a strange smile and said, "One of my own people? Master Su Yan, you're wrong. Here, there are only those who can be killed and those who cannot be killed. There have never been any of my own people. Yuan Tianfang injured my subordinates, stole my martial suppression hall, and humiliated me in front of everyone. Naturally, he is the kind of person who can be killed." Chapter 802. It was possible for Chu Xiu to come to the Great Light Temple for anything, but Su Yan would never have thought that Chu Xiu would come to join forces with him to kill one of his own. Anyway, from Su Yan's perspective, Yuan Tianfang was one of the hidden devil faction. Just like the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery, even if they had conflicts, they would not kill each other because they all belonged to the Buddhist faction. But now, Chu Xiu's actions were incomprehensible to Su Yan. Looking at Su Yan's expression, Chu Xiu said calmly, "Master Su Yan, you don't have to worry about why I want to kill one of my own. You just have to think about one thing. That is, killing Yuan Tianfang is beneficial to the Great Light Temple. Yuan Tianfang killed a disciple of the Great Light Temple. This grudge has already been formed. Moreover, Yuan Tianfang is the big boss of the Immortal lineage, a powerhouse of the true fire spirit refinement realm. Killing him is also helpful in weakening the strength of the Immortal lineage. Anyway, no matter how you look at it, there is no harm to the Great Light Temple, is there?" Hearing this, Su Yan's expression became even stranger. A member of the Hidden Devil faction was standing in front of him and discussing with him how to weaken the Hidden Devil faction. Was there anything more bizarre than this? Chu Xiu continued, "Actually, Master Su Yan, you should be happy. It's best if the entire Hidden Devil faction is filled with people like me who are selfish and don't care about the interests of the entire sect. That way, even without the suppression of the orthodox sects, the Hidden Devil faction will probably die from internal strife." Su Yan took a deep breath and said, "Regardless of whether what you say is true or not, there is no harm to the Great Light Temple if we can kill Yuan Tianfang. But now, the Great Light Temple can't do anything. The righteous and demonic battle has just ended, and the Great Light Temple doesn't want to do anything on a large scale because of the conflict in the martial world. If we kill Yuan Tianfang, the Great Light Temple will definitely attract the revenge of the entire Hidden Devil faction. Although the Great Light Temple isn't afraid, if we fight, it will still be a situation where both sides suffer. This is also what the Great Light Temple doesn't want to see." As he said this, Su Yan glanced at Chu Xiu and said, "Otherwise, why do you think the Temple of Great Light rarely interferes when you've caused such a ruckus in the northern Yen? Firstly, you have an agreement with Shidu. Secondly, the Great Light Temple really does not want to stir up trouble at this time. Secondly, even if the Great Light Temple wants to make a move, we are powerless now. Senior Brother Abbot is in closed-door training. Senior Brother Su Yun and Senior Brother Su Jing are also in closed-door training. Without a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse to take action, I don't want the other disciples of the Great Light Temple to die in vain." Chu Xiu stretched out his hand and said, "These 2 points are very simple. Master Su Yan, don't forget that in the hidden devil lineage, my position is no worse than Yuan Tianfang's. Don't worry, as long as Yuan Tianfang is killed, I will naturally deal with the hidden devil lineage. I will not let the Great Light Temple and the hidden devil lineage start a fierce battle. Su Yan frowned and said, but what if you deliberately fail to do it? Chu Xiu said alone, Master Su Yan, please don't worry about this. I, Chu Xiu, still have this bit of credibility. Moreover, I don't want the current hidden devil lineage to go against the Great Light Temple. In that case, I don't think there will be much left of the family business that I have set up in the northern Yen. As for the last point, it is even simpler. This time, even if Master Su Yun is not in closed-door training, I can't afford to invite him. The Great Light Temple only needs to send one person. Who? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, the head of Kongji Zen Hall, Master Su Du. Among the monks of the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiu had fought with Su Xing of the Dharma Hall. The strength of the other party could only be regarded as above average among the martial artists of the same rank. It was not weak, but it was definitely not the strong kind. But Su Du was different. Anyway, Chu Xiu couldn't see the depth of his strength. He was the kind that had reached the peak of the real pellet state. He was definitely qualified to challenge the real fire spirit refinement state. Su Yan was still a little hesitant. He acted calmly and never liked to do things that were too risky. In his opinion, this matter with Chu Xiu was a bit risky. Anyway, a person from the hidden devil lineage came to the Great Light Temple to ask him to join forces to kill a martial artist from the hidden devil lineage. No matter how he thought about it, it was awkward. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded, I agree to this matter. I've long been displeased with that old thing, Yuan Tianfang. Some time ago, his disciples actually forced the Shizang Lu family who sold spiritual wine to move away. This is outrageous. I have never seen a martial arts family that is more honest than the Lu family. Within a family, they only rely on selling spiritual wine to survive. He even bullies such a family. Bastard! Su Du rolled up the sleeves of his monk robe with a wine gourd hanging on his waist. He walked in aggressively with a look of righteous indignation. Su Yan slapped his head helplessly and said, Senior brother Su Du, how did you know about this? You even know that a small family like the Lu family is in trouble. Since when did you care so much about the martial arts world's news? Su Du waved his hand casually and said, Don't worry about how I know. We Buddhists are merciful. If something happens, we should take care of it. Chu Xiu, you are responsible for luring that old guy out. I will kill him along the way. Let's join forces and kill this old guy. At this time, Su Du looked like a bandit. He looked like he had a feud with Yuan Tianfang who killed his father. It was unknown whether it was because he hated evil or because Yuan Tianfang's disciples caused him to have no wine to drink. Seeing that Su Du had already agreed, Su Yan was helpless at this time. In front of Chu Xiu, how could he embarrass Su Du? Moreover, apart from the abbot of the Great Light Temple, the three great meditation halls' first seats were in charge. If Su Du was not unreliable, with his strength, Su Du would have been in charge of the Great Light Temple when the abbot, Su Ci, Su Yun, and Su Jing were all in seclusion. Chu Xiu said with a smile, when we have a concrete plan to take action, I will get someone to inform Master Su Du. With that, Chu Xiu bade farewell and left. After Chu Xiu left, Su Yan grumbled, Senior brother Su Du, why did you agree so quickly? Chu Xiu rushed to join forces with the Great Light Temple. There must be some hidden reasons. Moreover, the other party is a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse from the hidden devil clan. No matter what, you have to think it through. You agreed so quickly. Isn't that too hasty? Shu Du shook his head and said, Oh you worry too much. Let me ask you, if the lineage of hidden demons loses a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator, will it benefit the Temple of Great Light, or even the orthodox martial arts world? Su Yan said, of course. Even if we lose an ordinary demonic martial artist, it will still be beneficial to the orthodox martial arts world, much less a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse. When the demon disappears, the righteous will rise. The demon cannot suppress the righteous. This has been the case since ancient times. Su Du spread his hands and said, that's it. What's the use of thinking so much? Junior brother Su Yan, it's not that I want to criticize you, but sometimes you really should be more decisive. Yuan Tianfang, that old thing, has stirred up the entire northern Yen. Although Chu Xiu isn't a good person, at least he knows the rules. Otherwise, you wouldn't have agreed to a 3-month deadline with him, right? Moreover, that old thing, Yuan Tianfang, was simply bad and stupid. His group of idiotic disciples had tormented the Wulin of Northern Yen Kingdom. The Great Light Temple is one of the leaders of the orthodox martial arts world, the #1 sect in Northern Yen. Are we really going to let Yuan Tianfang's disciples do as they please? How will the other forces look at the Great Light Temple? If we settle this a day later, it will be a heavy blow to the reputation of the Great Light Temple. Su Yan looked at Su Du in surprise. He could actually see the relationship of interests so clearly. Now, Su Yan could not tell if Su Du wanted to kill Yuan Tianfang for the benefit of the Great Light Temple or if he wanted to kill Yuan Tianfang purely because he could not drink any wine. At this time, after Chu Xiu returned to the Jianghu Hall, he was thinking of a way to lure Yuan Tianfang out of the Jianghu Hall. The other party always stayed in Yanjing City. One reason was that Chu Xiu did not want to make a move here as it would cause too much of a commotion. Another reason was that Chu Xiu was afraid that the Northern Yen court would interfere at will. As for Xiang Long, Chu Xiu did not have much hope. The cooperation between him and Xiang Long was now only in name. Both sides were close to completely falling out. Luring Yuan Tianfang out was actually very simple. Chu Xiu asked for Shui Wuxiang's help, as well as the cooperation of a small clan. He engraved an ancient array formation in that clan's territory, then deceived Yuan Tianfang's disciples and grand disciples, saying that this was a supreme treasure passed down from ancient times, but no one was able to open it. Of course, the ancient formation that Shui Wuxiang was proficient in was not something that these people could open at will. Even when they asked Duanjiao for help, even Duanjiao could not open it. They could only let Yuan Tianfang go alone. After leaving Yanjing City, Yuan Tianfang only had a feeling of unease, but he could not find the source of this feeling. The perception of warriors was extremely sharp, especially those like Yuan Tianfang. In the past, when Yuan Tianfang was in his prime, he killed wantonly in Jianghu. That was not a joke, so Yuan Tianfang's perception was the most acute at that time. But now, as he grew older, although Yuan Tianfang's qi and blood did not decline, it was no longer growing. As for his perception, it had actually begun to degenerate. Therefore, Yuan Tianfang had always thought that there was something dangerous hidden in the ancient formation. He was still thinking about how he should break the formation. At this moment, Yuan Tianfang's footsteps suddenly stopped. At the end of the road, there was a slovenly monk with a wine gourd on his waist looking at him angrily, as if he had a grudge against Yuan Tianfang for killing his father. Looking at the monk, Yuan Tianfang knew that the other party should be a monk from the Great Light Temple, and his strength was definitely not weak. He could even faintly feel the terrifying power in the other party's body. Yuan Tianfang thought that the other party was here because he had killed Zhong Ping, so he said, "This is the Great Light Temples." However, Su Du did not give him a chance to speak at all. He immediately shouted angrily and rushed forward, "Old demon Yuan, die." Chapter 803. Su Du's strength had always been a mystery. Even some people in the Great Light Temple did not understand how strong this somewhat unruly Kongji Zen Hall chief was. In the past, Chu Wuji had fought with Su Du, and even Chu Wuji could not figure out Su Du's strength. However, the only thing that was certain was that Su Du had definitely reached the peak of the real pellet state, and his combat power was amazing. He was definitely the kind of existence that could compete with the true fire spirit refinement state. At this time, Su Du's body was shining with Buddha's light, and a glaring Vajra appeared behind him. As he punched, the glaring Vajra roared at the sky, and the surrounding Buddha's light turned into angry flames that smashed down. Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly. He took a step forward, and the boundless demonic qi around him had already soared into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds. In an instant, the sky was covered with dark clouds. Even people more than 10 miles away could perceive this powerful force. When the true fire spirit refinement state attacked, the power couldn't be concealed even if they wanted to. Some of the nearby martial artists were shivering. They were curious and wanted to check it out, but they didn't have the guts. It also required strength to watch the show. If they wanted to watch the show with their little strength, they would die. At this time, in the field, the 8 giant demonic qi hands in the air were positioned in 8 directions, and they smashed toward Su Du at the same time. With a loud bang, the Buddha's light was extinguished, and the glaring Vajra was directly smashed. Yuan Tianfang put his hands together to form a seal, and the 8 giant demonic qi hands condensed in 8 directions, instantly turning into a huge cage, trapping Su Du in it. Yuan Tianfang also saw that although the monk's strength was amazing, he was only a martial Dao master. He had not reached the true fire spirit refinement state yet, so Yuan Tianfang could subdue him. After all, not everyone in the underworld was like Qinqing Di, who had the strength to blow away the true fire spirit refinement state with one punch at the real pellet state. Yuan Tianfang didn't continue to attack. He just asked, "I don't seem to have any grudges with your great light temple, right? What do you mean by attacking me?" Su Du sneered, "Old man, you killed my great light temple's disciple, and you say there's no grudge? Of course, the most despicable thing is that you caused me to have no wine to drink." Yuan Tianfang frowned. "What does it have to do with me if you don't have any wine to drink?" However, before Yuan Tianfang could continue to say anything, another Guanyin Dharma form emerged from the Buddhist light around Shidu. It had 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. Endless Buddhist light bloomed and melted. In an instant, Yuan Tianfang's devil qi giant hand was completely eroded and melted. As Shidu pinched the Buddhist seal with his hand, the Dharma form behind him quickly transformed into the immovable Wisdom King Dharma form with 4 faces and 8 arms. As Shidu attacked, it smashed toward Yuan Tianfang. Yuan Tianfang frowned. Who was this monk? This martial Dao was a little too exaggerated. Ordinary martial artists of the Great Light Temple mainly cultivated one path. For example, Zongxian mainly cultivated the Vajra seal, while the monks of the Vajra Yard naturally cultivated the Furious Vajra Heart Sutra, cultivating the power of Vajra. Su Du, on the other hand, had a myriad of changes in his martial path. He cultivated the power of Vajra and the Bodhisattva view. Now, he even had the Wisdom King seal. He worshipped the Buddha, but Shidu had fused the different attributes of Buddhist power into one. Was this guy sincere and thought that all Buddhas were equal, or did he not take these Buddhas seriously at all? Yuan Tianfang had not been to the Central Plains for a long time. In addition, Shidu usually kept a low profile, so Yuan Tianfang did not recognize Shidu. However, he was sure that someone with such strength was at least a first seed of the Great Light Temple. So when he attacked, Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly as he attacked. "What is the Great Light Temple trying to do? Don't think that I really don't dare to kill." He did not think that the other party had come to kill him just because of a disciple. If the Great Light Temple was so reckless, they probably would not have survived until now. Shidu did not answer and continued to attack wildly. Seeing this, Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly and said, "Good, good, good. Since you want to fight, then don't blame I for not showing mercy to the Great Light Temple." For so many years, it had always been him, Yuan Tianfang, who chased and attacked others like a madman. When had there ever been a time when others chased and attacked him? As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic qi around Yuan Tianfang flourished, and the demonic qi whirlpool in midair stirred. As Yuan Tianfang formed a fist seal, he smashed it down. Every time he smashed it, one of Shudu's dharma would be smashed to pieces, causing him to grimace in pain. In the past, Yuan Tianfang was able to kill the true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses of the Chunyang Dao sect and the true martial cult. In terms of strength, Yuan Tianfang was definitely not weak. Moreover, what others did not know was that Yuan Tianfang had not given his true inheritance to anyone, including Xing Situ. Yuan Tianfang's 10 directions infinite heaven-shaking demonic technique was a demonic technique that he had created himself. It was a fusion of countless ancient demonic techniques that Yuan Tianfang had collected over the years, as well as some demonic techniques and secret techniques of the Kunlun devil cult. Its power was indeed very strong. Of course, he had named it himself. From Yuan Tianfang's point of view, the longer the name, the stronger the technique. His demonic technique was worthy of its name. The demonic might was vast and majestic. Even Shudu could not do anything about this kind of crushing power. After all, he was not at the true fire spirit refinement realm yet. At that moment, Yuan Tianfang suddenly felt an extreme sense of danger. His heart began to beat wildly, and a chill rushed to his heart. In that instant, Yuan Tianfang immediately changed his target and retreated. The demonic qi whirlpool condensed 10 giant arms. This was Yuan Tianfang's full attack. As Yuan Tianfang's hands formed a seal, the 10 giant demonic hands also formed a seal at the same time. 10 directions demon seal. While Yuan Tianfang was forming a seal, a pitch-black arrow had already shot out. Everywhere it passed, the qi of heaven and earth was destroyed. The pitch-black arrow blasted onto the 10 directions demon seal. The demonic qi was black, but the black on the arrow could be said to be the ultimate black. It was the power of destruction, the power of nirvanic extermination. In an instant, the 10-directional Skyfiend seal began to crumble, and the 10 giant demonic hands also began to crumble. The demonic qi around Yuan Tianfang surged, and a huge vortex of demonic qi rushed over, wrapping the power of the arrow within it. But in the next moment, it shattered with a loud bang. But fortunately, the moment the demonic qi whirlpool shattered, the power of the arrow finally dissipated. Chu Xiu. Yuan Tianfang spat out these 2 words through gritted teeth. His face was full of killing intent as he looked at Chu Xiu behind him. Triple City Annihilation Arrow. In the past, Dugu Weiwei destroyed the Iron Emperor Castle. Although few people in the outside world knew about it, it could not be hidden from the people inside the Yinma clan. They had long known that Chu Xiu had obtained a part of Dugu Weiwei's inheritance in the secret realm left behind by the Yinma clan. Yuan Tianfang never thought that Chu Xiu would dare to kill him. Where did he get such courage from? He was one of the big shots of the Yinma clan, one of the leaders of the entire Yinma clan. No matter how glorious Chu Xiu was, he was still a junior. Had he ever thought of the consequences of offending his superiors? At the same time, Yuan Tianfang's heart was palpitating. In the past, Patriarch Dugu's martial arts were so powerful that it made people tremble. Back then, Fang Jinwu died under Chu Xiu's Triple City Annihilation Arrow. Although his strength was much stronger than Fang Jinwu, he had to use all his strength to block the arrow. Moreover, under the sneak attack, if he had been a little slower, he would have been seriously injured even if he had not died. Just as Yuan Tianfang was about to say something, Su Du, who was behind him, had already made his move. Behind Su Du, the guardian deity, bodhisattvas, and Buddhas, and countless shadows flashed behind him. Thousands of Buddhas and 10,000 Dharma, only one thought in the heart is eternal. Suddenly, countless Buddha shadows condensed in it. The Buddha's light shone and completely enveloped Yuan Tianfang. At this time, Chu Xiu also moved. Although using the Triple City Annihilation Arrow just now consumed a lot of energy, the current Chu Xiu was not the Chu Xiu who had killed Fang Jinwu. One arrow could hollow him out. The heavenly demon dance slashed down with an angry roar of devil chi and an evil devouring power. There was even a faint image of a hungry ghost that was attached to it, roaring constantly. "You are courting death." Yuan Tianfang's eyes were bloodshot. He never thought that Chu Xiu would be so bold as to join forces with the monks of the Great Light Temple to kill him. What was he trying to do? Was he going to cut himself off from the hidden devil lineage? At this time, neither Su Du nor Chu Xiu responded to Yuan Tianfang. They were here to kill, so what was the point of saying so much useless stuff? Even Su Du, who had always been flirtatious, only attacked at this time and did not say a word. The devil chi that soared into the sky was like a volcanic eruption. The power accumulated by Yuan Tianfang after so many years of cultivating several kinds of devil skills was simply amazing. The devil power soared into the sky and instantly broke through the shackles of the Buddha's light. At the same time, Yuan Tianfang stretched out his hand, and the giant hand of devil chi that he had transformed directly grabbed the blade of Chu Xiu. However, in an instant, the power of the hungry ghost broke out, and the giant hand of devil chi was directly swallowed in half. However, at this time, 8 giant hands of devil chi fell at the same time, either with fists, palms, or finger techniques. Each giant hand of devil chi contained a kind of martial arts transformation. For a demonic rogue cultivator like Yuan Tianfang who had risen from humble beginnings, although their inheritance of martial arts might not be stronger than that of Chu Xiu, the number of martial arts he mastered was not inferior to that of Chu Xiu. At the moment when the giant hands of devil chi fell, a blood shadow flashed around Chu Xiu. The great blood shadow technique was displayed, and the blood shadows all over the sky met the 8 giant hands. Blood-colored sword chi soared into the sky, blood-colored Buddha's light filled the air, and even blood-colored thunderbolts crashed down. The martial arts of these experts from 500 years ago were displayed to the extreme at this moment, and the 8 giant hands of devil chi were directly smashed to pieces. Behind Yuan Tianfang, Su Du changed his previous cheeky appearance. His dharma was solemn, and in the Buddha's light, countless Buddha shadows merged into his body. As his palm fell, 10,000 Buddhas became one. The powerful devil chi around Yuan Tianfang was directly penetrated, and he was blasted by the palm. His face instantly turned extremely pale. At this time, the surrounding boundless blood shadows also merged into one, attached to Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance. The blood-colored blade slashed down, directly leaving a huge wound on Yuan Tianfang's chest, and blood suddenly gushed out. Chapter 804. Yuan Tianfang could be said to be extremely miserable at this time. The Buddha's light entered his body, and the hot Buddha's light was like magma, constantly eroding and destroying his meridians. The restraint of Buddha's aura on the demonic martial artist was exerted to the maximum in an instant. Moreover, Chu Xiu's attack was even more demonic. At the same time that it injured him, there was a wave of power that kept on devouring his vital energy and blood, weakening his power. Yuan Tianfang never imagined that one day he would be forced into such a state by 2 real pellet state martial artists. Even when he was defeated by the old Daoist of Mount Longhu, he wasn't so embarrassed. Moreover, the old Daoist of Mount Longhu that he lost to in the past was not an ordinary person. Although the old Daoist was unknown in Jianghu, he was the old Daoist apprentice of the old Daoist master. In other words, he almost served the old Daoist master for a lifetime. Although he was younger than the old Daoist master, he was not much younger. It was not shameful to be severely injured by such a person, but now he was forced to such an extent by the joint forces of the 2 juniors, Chu Xiu and Su Du. At this moment, Yuan Tianfang's fierceness had been aroused. In an instant, bloody demonic patterns appeared on Yuan Tianfang's face, and the demonic qi around him was also mixed with a trace of bloody color. His breath became extremely fierce. "Lu Jiang," he said in surprise, "this old guy actually learned the blood demon transformation technique. Who the hell leaked this thing?" Chu Xiu asked, "This is part of your blood demon demonic power?" Lu Jiang he nodded, then shook his head and said, "This is a mystic art that I researched in the past to match the blood demon demonic power. It can maximize the power of qi and blood in the body and fuse with demonic qi. It is enough to change the world, but I sealed it and gave up in the end. The reason is that when I was studying this mystic art, I went to the extreme. The blood demon demonic power's recovery ability is amazing, second only to the indestructible demonic pill. However, this secret technique consumed the qi and blood essence of the original body. Rather than using this secret technique to put his life on the line, the original body might as well burn his blood essence to escape and come back for revenge after he recovered. It seems that my blood demon hall was thoroughly ransacked in the past. Even something like this was dug out. Kid, be careful. Even I haven't used this thing before, but the effects of the deduction are extremely shocking." Chu Xiu secretly curled his lips. To put it bluntly, Lu Jiang he was afraid of death and didn't want to fight with his life on the line. That was why he sealed such a desperate secret technique. However, the effect of this secret technique could be said to be quite remarkable. When Yuan Tianfang, an old devil of the true fire spirit refinement realm, started to fight with all his might, the power was simply astonishing. The 10 giant arms began to transform. Behind the arm, a huge demonic shadow appeared. In an instant, the area within a few dozen li turned into a demonic domain. The powerful demonic power directly suppressed Su Du's figure and forced him to retreat step by step. The demonic shadow whistled down, and the layer of Buddha's light around Su Du's body was directly melted. It seemed that he would not be able to withstand it. Chu Xiu pinched a Buddhist seal with his hand and displayed the sun-changing technique. The Vairocana phantom behind him also bloomed with endless Buddha's light, wanting to use the Buddha's light to resist this earth-shaking demonic power. However, under the suppression of the demonic shadow, the power of Vairocana was actually no match and was completely crushed. Lu Jiang he chuckled in Chu Xiu's mind and said, "What did I say? This is a secret technique created by me in the past. Even if it was sealed because it was useless, its power should not be underestimated. Also, I said before, if you want to sneak attack, then sneak attack. Why use the Triple City Annihilation Arrow? Save your strength and use it as a final trump card, okay? Shut up." Chu Xiu spat at Lu Jianghe. This guy's mouth was too loose. As Chu Xiu made his move, he began to command in Chu Xiu's mind. However, this guy's fighting style was a little too wretched. Most of Lu Jianghe's previous opponents had been exhausted to death by him. He was not like Chu Xiu, who was mainly fierce and violent, attacking forcefully the moment he started. At this time, Su Du could not hold on any longer. He finally said, "I say, Chu Xiu, it's not that I'm running away, but that old thing is too fierce. You didn't say that he still had this move." Chu Xiu was sure that Su Du must still have a trump card at this time. However, looking at Su Du's appearance, it was obvious that he was not going to use his trump card to fight with Yuan Tianfang. For the Great Light Temple, killing Yuan Tianfang was indeed in line with their long-term interests. However, Yuan Tianfang was already seriously injured and had even begun to use a life-risking secret technique. In the future, Yuan Tianfang would definitely end up seriously injured and would not have the strength to continue messing around in the northern Yen land. This was also in line with the Great Light Temple's interests. Therefore, even if he withdrew and retreated, he would not be at a disadvantage. There was no need to fight with his life on the line. As for Chu Xiu, he could only say sorry. Chu Xiu's expression did not change. To be honest, he borrowed the Great Light Temple's hand to find an excuse and another layer of insurance. killing people still depended on oneself. Under the demonic might, Chu Xiu dispersed the Buddhist light on his body. Suddenly, an extremely evil power surged around his body. He formed a seal with his hands. The complicated seal was something that Lu Jianghe had never seen before. At the same time, Chu Xiu spat out syllables from his mouth. The sound did not sound like a human's voice. It was extremely strange. Lu Jianghe felt a chill in his heart when he heard it, and he could not help but tremble. In mid-air, the huge dark clouds of demonic qi had been affected by Yuan Tianfang's aura. However, at this time, it had all turned into a pitch-black color. Within a radius of dozens of miles, the sun and moon had lost their light. It had turned into an eternal night. Su Du shuddered violently. He looked at Chu Xiu and then at the sky. What was this thing? The fierce aura had surpassed Yuan Tianfang's demonic qi. It was as if some ancient evil creature had been released. Even Yuan Tianfang could not help but feel a chill in his heart. This power actually made him, who had entered the stage of fighting with his life on the line, feel fear. At this moment, an extremely shrill cry sounded. It did not sound like a human's voice, but it carried an evil power that penetrated people's hearts. Su Du's face turned pale, and he chanted scriptures to resist it. Yuan Tianfang, who bore the brunt of it, spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a dead man's. The cries continued. In the pitch-black world, blood-colored raindrops fell as if the heavens were crying. The devil qi around Yuan Tianfang was completely melted by the blood-red raindrops. He was struggling, but in his incantation-like cries, his struggles became weaker and weaker, until he was completely lifeless. When the last raindrop fell, Yuan Tianfang's body seemed to have vaporized, and in an instant, he turned into countless specks of dust that scattered in the air. The blood rain stopped, and the eternal night dispersed. Su Du looked at Chu Xiu in shock. At this moment, Chu Xiu was still standing there, but the aura on his body was unstable. In particular, his eyes, which did not contain the slightest human emotion, only endless fierceness. It could be said to be extremely evil. It was not until a moment later that Chu Xiu's eyes returned to normal, but at the same time, an extreme sense of exhaustion swept through his body. Looking at the scene in front of him, even Chu Xiu did not expect the power of this cultivation method to be so strong. This was the ultimate power brought about by combining the 7 forms of the Great Compassion Mantra, the Great Compassion Mantra of heaven and earth conquering devil wailing heaven. In the past, Chu Xiu had only tried the starting form of this cultivation method slightly, and he had already suffered a backlash. Now that he had really used it, Yuan Tianfang was directly strangled until not even his ashes were left, but the power of the backlash was extremely terrifying. When he performed it just now, the power of the Great Compassion Mantra of devil wailing heaven went straight into the bottom of his heart. It was an extremely and evil power, which could be said to be the combination of all the ferocity in the world. It could be said that if one was not careful, the caster would fall into it and go completely crazy, becoming a ferocious existence without the slightest emotion, only knowing how to destroy and kill everything. In the end, Chu Xiu seemed to have a feeling that the power that Dugu Weiwei had left for him last time was activated, which was why the backlash of the Great Compassion Mantra of devil wailing heaven was blocked. In short, it was better not to use this cultivation method unless it was a critical moment. Lu Jianghe seemed to have only just reacted, and he said in shock, F***ck, F***ck, F***ck. This is the combination of the 7 forms of the Great Compassion Mantra of heaven and earth conquering yin and yang? You actually gathered all of this evil cultivation method? Even 500 years ago, the Great Compassion Mantra of yin and yang was very famous. Many people wanted to completely gather it, but no one had been able to do it. He did not expect that when Chu Xiu used these 7 cultivation methods as one, the power brought about would make Lu Jianghe feel a chill all over his body. Su Du looked at Chu Xiu, and there was no smile on his face, only deep fear. He even had to consider whether he should attack Chu Xiu at this time. Because now he realized that compared to Chu Xiu, Yuan Tianfang was simply a scum. If Chu Xiu cultivated to the true fire spiritual cultivation realm, he could not imagine what kind of power Chu Xiu would have. He was afraid that at that time, the demonic flames would really be monstrous. However, Su Du did not make a move because he was not sure. Just now, even the aftermath of the Great Compassion Mantra was unbearable for Su Du. He had to rest for a period of time, and he had to admit that Chu Xiu scared him. Although this level of power was not something that ordinary people could control, and Chu Xiu must be exhausted now, he did not dare to gamble. What if Chu Xiu still had strength left? After a long while, Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Congratulations to Master Su Du for killing Yuan Tianfang. Real pellet state killing true fire spiritual cultivation realm. This kind of achievement is enough for Master Su Du to enter the top 10 of the martial artist list." Su Du frowned, "But you killed him." Chu Xiu said with a smile, "That's not important. Yuan Tianfang is already dead, and there's only the two of us left here. Whoever I say killed him is the one who killed him. I will give this achievement to you, Master Su Du. After returning to the Yinma clan, I will also have an explanation. We each take what we need. We cooperated very happily in this battle." Chapter 805. In the Great Light Temple, Su Yan had been sensing the movements outside. He was a little worried. Although Su Du had always been a little unreliable, he was one of the first seats of the Great Light Temple's 3 great meditation halls. If anything happened to him, it would definitely be a huge loss for the Great Light Temple. Su Yan had wanted to help, but he was mocked by Su Du. He said that with his strength, he would only be a hindrance if he went. Hence, Su Yan did not go in a fit of anger. Now, he was even more worried. After a few hours, he sensed that Su Du had returned. Su Yan rushed to the door and immediately asked, "What's the result?" Su Du's expression was a little strange. He said softly, "Yuan Tianfang is dead. Not even his bones are left." Su Yan let out a long sigh. It was good that Yuan Tianfang was dead. The Hidden Devil clan had lost a true fire refinement realm powerhouse. The northern Yen land could finally be stable for a while. Su Du continued, "Chu Xiu said that he doesn't want the achievement of killing Yuan Tianfang. He left it to me." Su Yan's face lit up. Although at their level, they should not care about their reputation, in reality, how many people could really not care? Killing Yuan Tianfang was enough to make Su Du famous in the underworld. He could even enter the top 10 of the Wind Cloud list. However, at that moment, Su Yan realized that something was wrong with Su Du. According to Su Du's personality, he would definitely brag about how difficult the battle was and how strong he was after he returned. He would not stop talking. However, Su Du didn't look pleased at all. In fact, he was a little quiet. "Senior brother Su Du, what's wrong? Did something happen?" Su Du sighed and said, "Junior brother, I seem to have done something wrong this time." Su Yan frowned and said, "What did you do wrong?" Su Du looked into the air and mumbled, "I suddenly realized that compared to Chu Xiu, Yuan Tianfang is nothing. I hope that my thinking is wrong. Otherwise, I might regret it in the future." Su Yan was stunned. He did not understand what Su Du meant. At this time, Chu Xiu had also returned to the Jianghu Hall. After he returned to the Jianghu Hall, the first thing he did was to retreat immediately. The power of the Great Compassion Mantra of heaven and earth intertwining conquering devil cries to heaven was too great. It had almost exhausted all of Chu Xiu's power, whether it was his true qi or his mental power. He even had a feeling that the evil and ferocious aura had always existed in his mind and was slightly affecting him. Of course, while he was in seclusion, he didn't neglect other matters. Chu Xiu joined forces with Su Du to kill Yuan Tianfang so quickly that Yuan Tianfang's disciples and grand disciples didn't even have time to react. Therefore, before Chu Xiu went into seclusion, he sent Mei Qinglian and the others to deal with all these people. Without Yuan Tianfang, this group of people was just a motley crew, nothing more. At this time, in a small clan in the east of Yen, Duan Zhuo was waiting in the living room while cursing. There was a problem with the formation of this small clan, causing him to be unable to open it. He had no choice but to send a message to Yuan Tianfang to come over. After Yuan Tianfang came, he would probably scold him for being trash because he couldn't even handle such a small matter. I say, old man's son, what exactly is in your formation? Let me tell you, if the thing inside is too trash, don't blame me for falling out. Only Duan Zhuo could do such a strange thing after robbing someone else's things and saying that someone else's things were not good. The Sun family's family master was a timid little old man. On the surface, he pretended to be respectful, but in fact, he was sneering in his heart. He knew all this and was willing to cooperate with Chu Xiu. Compared to Yuan Tianfang, he obviously trusted Chu Xiu more. That lord first became famous in the east of Yen. His confidence in Chu Xiu was obviously greater than that of Yuan Tianfang. At this time, a few warriors guarding the door suddenly ran in a panic. Duan Zhuo frowned and said, "What's wrong? Is your grandmaster here?" The disciples hurriedly shook their heads and said, "It's not grandmaster, it's Chu Xiu's subordinates who have come to fight." Duan Zhuo sneered, "Chu Xiu has already admitted defeat. They actually dare to come and court death." As he spoke, Duan Zhuo walked out of the door. What greeted him was Lu Fengxian, Tangya, and some other warriors who originally belonged to the Jianghu Hall. Duan Zhuo sneered and said, "Little Marquis Lu Fengxian? Why, are you here to stand up for your brother? You are not a member of the Jianghu Hall. You better not get involved in this kind of thing. Even Chu Xiu doesn't dare to speak in front of my master. Why did you bring so many people here? Flaunting your strength or?" Before he could finish speaking, an extremely explosive and fierce devil aura burst out from the halberd in Lu Fengxian's hands. It was incomparably ferocious. As the halberd smashed down, the angry roar was simply ear-piercing. Duan Zhuo didn't expect Lu Fengxian to make a move just like that. He screamed, and lines of blood appeared in his hands. Boundless blood aura and devil aura condensed into a giant hand to block in front of him. However, under Lu Fengxian's halberd, no matter what cultivation technique or martial skill it was all shattered with a loud bang. Moreover, the weapon in Lu Fengxian's hand this time was not an ordinary precious weapon, but an unparalleled divine weapon. The huge force and the surging devil aura burst out with a loud bang. That was the extreme strength. With just one move, Duan Zhuo was forcefully smashed by Lu Fengxian's halberd. That's right, it was smashed. Like a balloon, it burst with a loud bang. Blood and flesh scattered all over the sky. The scene was extremely terrifying. Duan Zhuo's disciples seemed to be dumbfounded. They stood there in a daze for a long time before they let out a scream. Tangya grinned. It seemed like he had to get to know this good friend of official Chu's again. Originally, he was a little worried that Lu Fengxian would be a little soft-hearted and be unable to be ruthless. Or that she would first reason with them and want them to take the initiative to submit to her. In the end, he realized that Lu Fengxian's reason and his easygoing attitude were actually only directed at his own people. To outsiders, this person was a standard person. He didn't speak much, and he didn't even bother to enjoy the pleasure of victory. The scene was really very bloody. Lu Fengxian turned around and said to Tangya, "I'll leave the rest to you guys. To deal with them, your speed is faster than mine." Tangya nodded and revealed a sinister smile on his face as he said, "No problem." As soon as his voice fell, Tangya's subordinates, who used to be from the Blue Dragon Society and were now the elites of the Jianghu Hall, made their move and strangled Yuan Tianfang's group of disciples and grand disciples. The same scene happened not only with Duanjiao, but also everywhere in northern Yan. In almost a day, the people that Chu Xiu had arranged in various places had already been mobilized. In the blink of an eye, they killed all of Yuan Tianfang's disciples and grand disciples, completely destroyed them, and took back the Jianghu Hall. Having roamed the pugilistic world for so long, Chu Xiu had done quite a number of things such as destroying clans and exterminating clans. However, this was the first time someone had rushed up to him to be exterminated. He had killed them all. A few days after the end of the matter, the news of Yuan Tianfang's death was completely spread. In fact, when Chu Xiu teamed up with Su Du to besiege Yuan Tianfang that day, the movement of the fight was a little too big, and many people around saw it. However, although they saw it, the power was too strong. No one dared to go to the front to watch the battle, so there were no witnesses. When Wind-Sweeping Tower spread the news, the Great Light Temple did not refute it. Only then did everyone really know that Yuan Tianfang was dead. He died in the hands of the Great Light Temple's Kongji Zen Hall's first seat. Su Du. This also made many people sigh. The Great Light Temple's 3 great Zen Halls' first seats were indeed extraordinary. None of them were mediocre. This news was spread by Wind-Sweeping Tower. To be precise, it was Chu Xiu who instructed Lu Yu to spread it. It could be considered as giving him big news. Although it did not make him the tower master of the Northern Yan branch, he could at least become a big steward. However, since the news was spread by Chu Xiu, there must have been some editing involved. According to Wind-Sweeping Tower's version, the Great Light Temple hated Yuan Tianfang for killing their Great Light Temple's disciple and causing trouble in northern Yan, so the Great Light Temple was filled with righteous indignation and sent Su Du to kill Yuan Tianfang. Of course, Chu Xiu was also involved. The triple city destruction arrow that he shot was too eye-catching. However, Chu Xiu was only a bystander in this story. He only appeared after Yuan Tianfang was killed and shot an arrow. After realizing that it could not do anything to Su Du, he could only let him leave. Chu Xiu didn't care about these false reputations anymore, so he also generously gave this achievement to Su Du. Real Pellet State beheaded the Real Fire Spirit Refinement State, and he also took on Chu Xiu's triple city destruction arrow. With this achievement, Su Du directly stepped into the 10th place on the list. He became the second person in the top 10 of the list besides Chen Qingdi to step into the top 10 before reaching the Real Fire Spirit Refinement State. After dealing with Yuan Tianfang's disciples, Mei Qinglian returned to Jianghu Hall. Chu Xiu had almost recovered his own consumption at this time. Mei Qinglian was not excited at this time. Instead, she was a little worried. "I say, you are playing too big this time. You actually joined forces with the Great Light Temple to kill Yuan Tianfang. How are you going to explain to the Yinma clan? Even if there is Old Wei, he can't handle such a big thing." Chu Xiu said faintly, "Wrong, it was Su Du who killed Yuan Tianfang, not me. Why should I handle it?" Mei Qinglian frowned and said, "What you did this time is too obvious. Do you think they will believe it?" Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, "Where is the evidence? Yuan Tianfang has already been blasted to smithereens. The dead can't testify. But what about Su Du? We can keep it a secret for you, but are you sure the Great Light Temple will keep it a secret for you?" Chu Xiu sneered and said, "This is even easier to explain. The Great Light Temple is an outsider. They definitely hope that our Yinma clan will kill each other, so this is a rumor, a false accusation. Why, they don't believe me, their own people, but they have to believe those bald donkeys?" Chapter 806. Mei Qinglian's worry was not unreasonable. This matter was a little too big. The Yinma clan currently did not have a supreme powerhouse at the mysterious heaven and earth realm. They, the powerhouses at the true fire spirit cultivation realm, were the ones who carried the flag. But now one of them was dead, and it was said that he died at the hands of the Great Light Temple. How could this not cause a sensation? Moreover, it was still unknown whether Yuan Tianfang had died at the hands of Shidu. Just as Mei Qinglian said, although Yuan Tianfang had died without a complete corpse, there were too many suspicious points in this matter that could not stand scrutiny. Chu Xiu had just become enemies with Yuan Tianfang, and then Yuan Tianfang was killed on the other side. Chu Xiu also publicly killed Yuan Tianfang's disciples and descendants. If this matter had nothing to do with Chu Xiu, who would believe it? Therefore, after learning of this matter, the Yinma clan immediately called Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian to meet up with them in eastern Qi. In name, it was to ask about the details of the matter, but in fact, it was more like an interrogation. This time, the place was arranged to be in a secret stronghold near the capital of eastern Qi, Great Liang City. Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian had been on the road for nearly a month without any rest in between. Only then did they arrive at Great Liang City. Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian were so anxious because he wanted to see Wei Shuya in advance. However, things seemed to have changed. In order to prevent Wei Shuya from saying anything to Chu Xiu, the other people of the Yinma clan specially sent people to guard around Great Liang City. As soon as Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian appeared, they were invited away. There was no chance for them to meet Wei Shuya. In the underground hall of the secret stronghold, several big shots of the Yinma clan gathered. Chu Xiu saw Wei Shuya and a few others. They did not come in as comprehensive as during the battle between the righteous and demonic paths. However, this was also very normal. Yuan Tianfang's death was only a personal problem, and the last time was a major event that affected the entire Jianghu. Of course, he had to be more cautious. Wei Shuya looked at Chu Xiu, his face expressionless. It was impossible to tell if he was happy or angry. Everyone knew the relationship between him and Chu Xiu, so on this occasion, unless it was a critical moment, it was really not suitable for him to say something. At this time, a big shot of the Hidden Devil clan, who was completely covered in a black robe, said in a deep voice, "Chu Xiu, I believe you know why we're looking for you. What do you have to say about Yuan Tianfang's death?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Wind-sweeping tower has already spread the news, what else can I say? Wind-sweeping tower is news from wind-sweeping tower, but why do I feel that something is wrong? The Temple of Great Light should know that Yuan Tianfang is one of the leaders of the Yinma faction. Why did they spend so much effort to kill Yuan Tianfang?" Chu Xiu suddenly laughed and said, "Do you want to hear the truth or a lie?" The big shot of the Hidden Devil clan frowned and said, "Of course it's the truth. The truth is a little disrespectful to Senior Yuan, are you sure you want to hear it?" "Of course we want to hear it." Chu Xiu snorted and said, "If that's the case, then don't blame me for being harsh. Yuan Tianfang deserved to be killed. I know you suspect that I'm behind this because I have a grudge against Yuan Tianfang. However, just look at what Yuan Tianfang did in the northern Yan land. He was purely challenging the bottom line of the Temple of Great Light. When I was in charge of the Suppression Martial Hall, I joined forces, coerced and lured them, and killed to deter them. Only then did I control a part of the situation in the northern Yan martial world. Moreover, after exchanging a few blows with Su Du of the Temple of Great Light, I was finally able to gain a foothold in the northern Yan land. The Temple of Great Light did not touch me because they had no time to do so now. Moreover, I also abided by everyone's tacit agreement and did not mess around. However, what did Yuan Tianfang do when he arrived in the northern Yan land? He led his group of disciples to stir up the entire northern Yan martial world. He simply did not leave anyone the slightest chance of survival. Before he died, there were already many masters of the northern Yan martial world who went to the Temple of Great Light to complain. As the leader of the northern Yan martial world, how could the Temple of Great Light not make a move in this situation? I even put aside my previous grievances and wanted to save Yuan Tianfang. After all, he was a true fire refinement realm powerhouse of the Hidden Devil clan. The death of one was a great loss to the Hidden Devil clan. However, it was a pity that Su Du's cultivation was unfathomable. It was only a matter of time before he broke through to the true fire refinement realm. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the second Qingqing Di. I shot an arrow at him with all my strength, but I could not do anything to him. I could only let him kill and leave. If I had forcefully intercepted him, I am afraid that I would have died there in the end. In order to find an excuse, Chu Xiu had increased Su Du's strength by several times. Chu Xiu was not afraid that they would guess it because Su Du was indeed very low-key and rarely fought with others. Among the Hidden Devil clan, there was only one person who had fought with Su Du, Chu Wuji. However, he would definitely not expose it. After Chu Xiu finished speaking, everyone present did not say anything. Indeed, if Yuan Tianfang's behavior was investigated carefully, it was indeed somewhat suicidal. Coupled with the Temple of Great Light's meddlesome personality, it was really possible that they would make a move on him. At this moment, someone suddenly asked, "The Temple of Great Light killing Yuan Tianfang is reasonable. However, according to what we know, after Yuan Tianfang died, you killed his disciples wantonly. Why? Do you still dare to say that it was not because of personal grievances?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "To be honest, there are some elements of personal grievances in this. However, this is not the real reason. The real reason is that I killed them for the sake of the overall situation." Someone was so angry that he laughed and said, "You killed your fellow disciples, and this is still considered the overall situation?" Chu Xiu snorted coldly and said, "You guys are not in the Northern Yan, so I am afraid you do not know what Yuan Tianfang has done. Most of the trouble was caused by his disciples and grand-disciples. It could be said that it made people gnash their teeth in hatred. By killing them, I can consider it as giving an explanation to the Northern Yan martial arts world and the Great Guangming Temple. This matter will be over. If I did not do this, the Temple of Great Light would use this as an excuse to attack the subduing martial hall, or even the entire Hidden Devil clan. At that time, would the Hidden Devil clan fight or not?" Chu Xiu sighed and said, "Now that the righteous and demonic war has just ended, the Bright Devil clan and the righteous have both suffered losses, it can be said that it is the best time for the Hidden Devil clan to recuperate." In the end, as one of the leaders of the Hidden Devil clan, some people did not look at the overall situation and acted recklessly. They almost provoked a fierce battle between the righteous and the Hidden Devil clan. Everyone, if you say that the Hidden Devil clan is not afraid of the Temple of Great Light and is not afraid to fight with the righteous martial world, then that is fine. I am willing to redeem myself by being the vanguard and fight to the death with the Temple of Great Light. However, on the contrary, if you do not want to fight with the Temple of Great Light, then it proves that I did not do anything wrong. Killing a few idiots who only know how to cause trouble in exchange for the Temple of Great Light to keep the peace and preserve the overall situation, I think it is worth it." Chu Xiu's words were powerful and the expression on his face was even more dignified, as if he had been greatly wronged but was still thinking for the Hidden Devil clan. Everyone present looked at each other and did not know what to say. Although there were many doubtful points in this matter, Chu Xiu had given an explanation. At the moment, there was no evidence, so what else could they do? Most importantly, Chu Xiu had poked at their sore spot. That was, no one in the entire Hidden Devil clan wanted to fight with the Temple of Great Light. Just like how the Temple of Great Light did not want to have a fierce battle with the Hidden Devil clan, the Hidden Devil clan, who was now divided and without a backbone, did not want to have a fierce battle with the Temple of Great Light because there was no benefit. The previous great battle between the righteous and demonic sects concerned the situation between the righteous and demonic sects. Even if there was no benefit for them personally, they had to take action. However, now that they had a choice, no one was willing to take action. Chu Xiu used this point to use the Hidden Devil clan as a deterrent at the Temple of Great Light. Now that he was at the Hidden Devil clan side, he used the Temple of Great Light as a deterrent, and the effect was quite good. Someone coughed and said, "If that's the case, then Chu can go down first. This time it has been hard on you, Chu. Although you are a junior, it is not easy for you to be able to see the overall situation so clearly." At this moment, everyone began to praise Chu Xiu, which made Mei Qinglian dumbfounded. She had seen everything that Chu Xiu had done. He had offended his superiors and killed his fellow disciples. In the end, it was Chu Xiu who was able to see the overall situation. This made people speechless. Chu Xiu walked down with a magnanimous expression. Wei Shuya also followed and said in a low voice, "Come back with me first." In this secret stronghold, the big shots of the hidden clan had their own individual rooms. After leading Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian in, Wei Shuya stared at Chu Xiu and said in a low voice, "Tell me, did you kill them? I don't believe that you can see the overall situation. If you really did, you wouldn't have killed Xing Situ during the great battle between the righteous and demonic sects in the moon-worshipping cult." Chu Xiu looked around. Wei Shuya scoffed softly and said, "There is a soundproof formation in the room. No one else can hear us." Chu Xiu smiled and said, "I can't hide anything from you, old man Wei. I was the one who killed them. I joined forces with Su Du to kill them." Wei Shuya immediately took a deep breath when he heard this. Even though he had vaguely guessed what had happened, he still could not accept that Yuan Tianfang had died at Chu Xiu's hands. Although Chu Xiu had killed Fang Jinwu in the past, this time was completely different. Although Fang Jinwu was a powerhouse in the true fire spirit refinement realm, he was an old man who was not worth mentioning. Although Yuan Tianfang was not at his peak, he was definitely not old. Most importantly, Yuan Tianfang was one of the big shots of the hidden demons. Regardless of their relationship, they had known each other for such a long time. In the end, he had been killed by Chu Xiu. No matter how one looked at it, it was a little awkward. Even Wei Shuya did not expect Chu Xiu's power to have grown to such a level. Chapter 807. Looking at Chu Xiu, Wei Shuya sighed deeply and said, "You're really bold. Aren't you afraid that if this matter is exposed, there will be no place for you in the Yinma clan?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I don't care about that. If I don't kill Yuan Tianfang, it won't feel good to be stared at by an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Besides, I've prepared so many excuses, so I'm not afraid of being exposed. The Yinma clan fights their own battles. Yuan Tianfang is dead, and most of his disciples and grand-disciples are dead. Who would take a dead man seriously?" Wei Shuya shook his head helplessly. That was really the case. If Yuan Tianfang was alive, maybe someone would stand on his side for the sake of their friendship in the past, or they just wanted Yuan Tianfang to owe them a favor. But now that Yuan Tianfang was dead, who would stand up for a dead man? People in Jianghu were very realistic, especially those in the Devil Dao, who were even more realistic. Next time something like this happens, remember to tell me. I'm not so old that I can't fight. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Elder Wei, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but it's useless even if you come. There's no one in charge in the Yinma clan. Xing Situ wanted to kill me, so I killed him. I'm not wrong. Yuan Tianfang came to me to avenge his disciple, but he's not wrong. When will there be an end to revenge? Only when one side is completely dead can this grudge be settled. At the beginning, if there was a person in charge who suppressed this matter, it would be fine, but now there isn't. So even if you go, it's useless. Yuan Tianfang may retreat temporarily, but he'll still be a problem in the future. With all due respect, Elder Wei, you can't suppress Yuan Tianfang." Wei Shuya let out a long sigh. This was also one of the drawbacks of the Yinma clan. Without a person in charge, they couldn't suppress so many Devil Dao villains with different personalities. In fact, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened to Chu Xiu. There had been internal killings between the Yinma clan. It was just that the others were not as bold as Chu Xiu, actually daring to even kill a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse. Forget it, let's put this matter in the past for now. Are you sure your people won't leak the news? Chu Xiu nodded and said, Elder Wei, don't worry. This time, the people who did it were all on our side. The Great Light Temple knows the news, but if they said it, it would mean that they were trying to sow discord within the hidden devil faction. Who would believe them? Seeing that Chu Xiu had arranged everything properly, Wei Shuya nodded. He was about to say something when someone knocked on the door. Wei Shuya pushed open the door and went out to take a look. A disciple said, Elder Wei, there's a piece of news from the pugilistic world. The lords are asking for you. Wei Shuya was stunned, and he subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was at a loss. Was the news leaked? It shouldn't be a problem. What news? The disciple of the hidden devil faction scratched his head and said, I'm not too sure. It seems that an ancient relic was excavated near the Great Light Temple. It's quite a big deal. Hearing that disciple say this, Chu Xiu was stunned. Could it be that the guys he had sent to excavate Lu Jianghe's treasures had dug up something amazing? Wei Shuya and Chu Xiu immediately returned to the meeting hall. The other big shots of the hidden devil faction who had just left also rushed back. Seeing that Wei Shuya had come, someone immediately handed him a piece of paper, which recorded the big event that had just happened. Chu Xiu went over to take a look. Sure enough, those guys had dug up something amazing. There were a total of 3 places with treasures, and 2 parts had been excavated. However, Chu Xiu had said that he would only give them 3 months, so this group of people was a little anxious. They did not dig in the place that Chu Xiu had specified, but started digging in other places. They did not expect to dig up something amazing. What they had dug up was an ancient relic, and it was an ancient relic with an independent space. However, the formation in that place was too strong, and it was not something that the small families could open. So after a while, the place was discovered by the Great Light Temple, and it was taken over by the Great Light Temple. However, there were too many witnesses to this incident. There were so many that almost all the small clans knew the details of this incident. Furthermore, the Great Light Temple could not silence them by killing them. Of course, there was no way to silence them, so the news gradually spread throughout the martial arts world. These small families were not knowledgeable and did not know what the relic represented. However, as the details spread in the pugilistic world, some knowledgeable people had already deduced that the ancient relic was not an ordinary ancient relic. It was a relic from the end of the ancient times, when the Great Calamity occurred. There might even be some secrets about the Great Calamity of the ancient times. In fact, regarding the ancient Great Calamity, ordinary warriors, and some warriors who stood at the peak of the underworld had a fundamentally different understanding of it. What ordinary martial artists knew was that in ancient times, a great calamity had descended and nearly destroyed everything. The present world had been rebuilt from the ruins of 10,000 years ago. However, the other big sects and the warriors who stood at the peak of the underworld undoubtedly knew more. They had dug up a lot of information and explored countless secret realms related to it. It could be said that the words "ancient great calamity" carried many secrets. For example, what kind of calamity was this ancient great calamity? Also, since the big sects and the powerhouses in ancient times had deduced the ancient great calamity, and they even deliberately created a secret box to store precious martial arts, then why did they not find a way to protect themselves, but just wait for death? Also, the ruins excavated by the major forces also found a suspicious point, which was that in ancient times, some of the top sects almost did not leave behind any inheritance, and even the sects had disappeared. For example, according to countless ancient records and some fragmented clues, the current underworld people had already deduced that in ancient times, there was a behemoth-like Taoism holy land called the Three Pristines Temple, which controlled the world's 3,000 Taoism sects, and was known as the supreme leader of Taoism. The current Taoist master mansion or the real martial arts sect could not be compared to that kind of existence. In the end, after the ancient Great Calamity, the Three Pristines Temple completely disappeared, and no relics were passed down, and no inherited martial arts were passed down. This was very unreasonable. Some forces that were much weaker than the Three Pristines Temple could leave behind some relics, but the Three Pristines Temple, which was much stronger than them, was completely annihilated. There was definitely something wrong with this. Moreover, the last time the ruins in Xiaofan Heaven opened, everyone finally found a place related to the Three Pristines Temple, which was a branch of the Three Pristines Temple. Although it was only a branch, it also revealed some news. It seemed that before the ancient Great Calamity, some people went to a place, and this place was not accessible to everyone. For example, Chu Xiu once found the diary written by a disciple of the ancient Taoism sect, Spirit Treasure Temple, in Xiaofan Heaven. Even in a large Taoism sect like Spirit Treasure Temple, only 2 people were qualified to go to that place, and this was on account of the lives of almost everyone in Spirit Treasure Temple. Chu Xiu was not the only one curious about this place, and almost all the sects and powerhouses that stood at the peak of underworld were curious about this. Therefore, Chu Xiu was sure that once this news came out, countless forces would flock to the secret realm, and it would be impossible for the Great Light Temple to monopolize it. Chu Xiu also asked Lu Jianghu in his mind, "There's such a secret realm relic so close to where you buried the treasure, and you actually didn't discover it?" Lu Jianghu said with a depressed expression, "The Great Light Temple has been located in the bitter north for tens of thousands of years. Who would have thought that there would be a secret realm relic under their own sect, and they actually didn't discover it themselves? Of course, I didn't think of this." Chu Xiu was also slightly speechless. Of course, the unluckiest one now was the Great Light Temple. There was such a relic under their own sect's feet, and they actually did not discover it. If the Great Light Temple was the first to discover this place, they could have found a way to completely cover up the secret realm relic, and it would not have been known by the entire underworld. Wei Shuya coughed and said, "Everyone, our Inma clan has been silent for a long time. During the great battle between the righteous and demonic, only our Inma clan did not suffer much damage. This time, we should stand up for the secret realm relic." Everyone present nodded their heads in agreement. They had no choice but to help the moon-worshipping cult, so they did not use their full strength. This time, exploring the secret realm relic, there was no reason for them not to make a move. Therefore, the discussion this time was very smooth, and no one objected. Everyone reached an agreement immediately, and Chu Xiu led the way to the bitter north. In the northern Yan region, the Inma clan did not have much power base. The Jianghu Hall run by Chu Xiu was considered the largest force, so this time, it was natural that Chu Xiu would take the lead. At the same time, on the Kunlun mountain in the far west, the mountain range towered into the clouds. The foot of the mountain was covered in snow all day long, and the mountainside was surrounded by clouds and mist, like a fairyland. The strangest thing was that at the top of the mountain, it was spring all year round, and it was a fairyland scene with birds singing and flowers fragrant. It was very out of place. Of course, such a scene only existed on the east side of Kunlun. The west side was gloomy, and it was shrouded in dark clouds and thunder all day long, like purgatory on earth. That was where the Kunlun devil cult used to be, and the East Kunlun mountain range belonged to Elysium. After the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, the eminent monks of Subodhi Monastery set up the 6 paths of Buddha reincarnation formation to seal the rootless sacred fire of the Kunlun devil cult. The entire West Kunlun mountain range was set up by countless sects with more than 10 kinds of absolute formations, and it was completely unsuitable for warriors to live in. The East Kunlun mountains where the Gate of Heaven was located were only separated by a mountain peak from the West Kunlun mountains. With the strength of the Gate of Heaven sect master, Jun Wuxian, it would be a piece of cake for him to break through those great formations and occupy the entire Kunlun mountains. However, for some unknown reason, the Gate of Heaven had never taken a step into the West Kunlun mountains even after so many years. Chapter 808. In the east and west heavens, the East Sea Heavens of Freedom and the Kunlun Heavenly Gate could be said to be the sects with the strongest individual combat power in the world. The master of the East Sea Heavens, Wuxia Xianxia, was elusive and only existed in legends. Although the Heavenly Gate was mysterious, it occasionally appeared in the martial world. At the peak of the East Kunlun, cave mansions were carved on the mountain peaks. There were all kinds of strange runes on them, which looked simple and desolate. At this time, in a cave mansion, an armored martial artist said emotionally, "Master, the 10-year deadline is not up yet. I should still be the one to step into the martial world this time. Why let this guy go?" This martial artist was one of the 9 great divine generals of the Heavenly Gates, Divine Lord Luo. In the past, when many sects had headed to the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall to besiege Chu Xiu, he had been scared off by the aura that Dugu Weiwa had leaked out, and had directly returned to the Heavenly Gates. Opposite to Divine Lord Luo, a middle-aged martial arts practitioner with loose hair and a mustache said with a faint smile, "Divine Lord Luo, are you still not convinced? Decades ago, you lost the key to Chu Kuanga. At that time, everyone said you were incompetent. You even said that you met a madman who didn't care about his life. But this time, you were scared away by a junior and ran back to the Heavenly Gate. What a joke. Dugu Weiwei, why don't you say that you met Ning Xuanji? 500 years have passed. The Kunlun devil cult has long perished." Divine Lord Luo said angrily, "Kuang Xieyue, you know nothing. The aura leaking out from that brat's body definitely belongs to Dugu Weiwa. I can forget other things, but you and I have seen the video of Dugu Weiwei slaughtering the 9 divine generals of the Heavenly Gate countless times. How can I forget it?" Kuang Xieyue, who was sitting on the stone chair, lazily said with a disdainful smile, "Divine Lord Luo, you've really cultivated so much that your brain has gone blank. Who is Chu Xiu? He is the heir of the hidden devil lineage." What is the identity of the hidden devil lineage? They were the remnants of the Kunlun devil cult. Chu Xiu obtained some of Dugu Weiwei's belongings, and they have some of his aura. What's so strange about that? Divine Lord Luo still wanted to say something, but a voice that wasn't too heavy suddenly came from above. "Shut up." Upon hearing this voice, Kuang Xieyue immediately stood up from his stone chair. Divine Lord Luo didn't dare to say anything else. A man who looked to be in his 30s sat at the head of the table. He wore a black robe, but his hair was as red as fire. His appearance was very ordinary, so ordinary that one would have almost no impression of him at first glance. However, his entire person was like a star. Even though he had such an ordinary appearance, when placed on his entire body, there was an invisible aura that made one unable to shift their eyes away. This person was the Lord of the Sky Gate, ranked 4th on the sovereign ranking, Jun Wushan. After the disappearance of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji for 500 years, no one would find it wrong to say that Jun Wushan was the world's 2nd strongest. Staring at Divine Lord Luo, Jun Wushan said calmly, "I can tolerate some mistakes once, but I can't tolerate it a second time. The first time, you met Chu Kuanga. Although this person rose to fame, his temperament is incomparable. I can understand that you suffered a loss at his hands. The second time, you met Chu Xiu. This person is the most outstanding figure of the younger generation in the pugilistic world, and he is also the heir of the hidden devil lineage. Just like what Kuang Xieyue said, he might have these things that Dugu Weiwei left behind. I can also understand that. However, a mistake is a mistake. Everyone only has one chance to step into the pugilistic world. If you waste it, don't think about getting a second chance. Last time, the key fell into Chu Kuanga's hands, but you could still get it back. This time, the ancient relic has appeared. There may or may not be a key in it. If it falls into the hands of the Great Light Temple or the Celestial Master's abode, do I have to do it myself? I can't do it a third time. This time, let Kuang Xieyue go. You are responsible for strengthening the seal that he is in charge of. Jun Wuxian's voice was very calm, as if he was just describing a very ordinary matter. There was no anger or any emotion in his voice. However, it was this calm tone that made Divine Lord Luo dare not say a word. He could only nod and bow in agreement. After walking out of the cave, Kuang Xieyue chuckled at Divine Lord Luo and said, "Brother Luo, I have been sleeping a little too much recently. My seal has not been strengthened for a while. After you take over, you will have to put in more effort. Don't worry, if I see Chu Xiu again, I will help you see what it is that scared you so much." Kuang Xieyue. Divine Lord Luo shouted angrily. However, the next moment, Kuang Xieyue's body moved like a stream of light, disappearing in the blink of an eye. The Divine General of Tianmen stepped into the Jianghu once again. This time, the matter of the ruins involved almost all the top sects in the Jianghu. At that moment, more than 10 miles from the foot of the mountain of the Great Light Temple, the place had already been taken over by the Great Light Temple. The small forces that had been digging for the treasures had all hurriedly retreated when they saw that the matter had become too big. Although they were greedy and curious about what was in the ruins, they also knew that if they tried to take something that did not belong to them, they would die a terrible death. Based on their strength, they could not even break the formation. They had dug a 300-meter-wide hole in the ground, which was emitting waves of dim light. There was a stone tablet engraved with dense ancient characters. Although some of them were broken, the meaning of the characters could still be read. This place was an independent space during the ancient age. It was rich in resources, so it was occupied by all the major forces. They all had their own sects in it. Moreover, before the arrival of the Ancient Age disaster, the major forces had once discussed how to survive the Ancient Age disaster. This was also the reason why everyone suspected that there was a secret regarding the Ancient Age disaster. At that moment, Su Yun and Su Yen stood at the side of the ruins. Among them, there were several warriors breaking the formation. These warriors were not from the Great Light Temple, but from the Black Martial sect, one of the 4 spirits. The warriors from the Black Martial sect were good at all kinds of machinery, formation puppets, and other miscellaneous things. This time, they had been invited by the Great Light Temple. The Great Light Temple was really not good at breaking this kind of ancient formation. Most importantly, once it was forcefully broken, the Great Light Temple was afraid that some accident would happen and destroy the space. After experiencing the Ancient Age disaster, such an independent space was actually extremely fragile. Once there was any damage, the entire space might collapse completely. When that happened, they would not be able to get anything. "Master Puyang, how much longer do we need to break the formation?" Su Yen asked anxiously. At that moment, the news had already spread. The longer they delayed, the more people would come. Speaking of which, the Great Light Temple felt very aggrieved. In the end, such a precious ancient ruin had been under the feet of the Great Light Temple for tens of thousands of years and had not been discovered by anyone. This was a joke. In the end, they had finally discovered it, but it was discovered by outsiders. Su Yen could even imagine that a group of martial artists would definitely swarm over, and the Great Light Temple would not be able to stop them. The person who broke the formation was Black Martial Sect's elder Puyang Yi. He was one of the rare formation grandmasters in the martial world. Hearing that, he leaped up from below and shook his head. It's easy to break the formation. However, this ruin has already been attacked by the Ancient Age disaster and is slightly fragile. Just breaking the formation might cause problems in this space. Therefore, I have to first strengthen the formation before breaking it. I reckon that it will take 1 or 2 days. Moreover, this ruin is similar to the ruins that were discovered before. Powerful martial artists at the mysterious heaven and earth realm probably won't be able to enter. At most, it can only accommodate powerful martial artists at the true fire refinement realm. Su Yun nodded and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you, Master Puyang." Puyang Yi hurriedly said, "You flatter me. Being able to break an ancient formation like this is very beneficial to my understanding of formations. I should be the one thanking the Great Light Temple." Su Yun said to Su Yan, who was beside him, "Don't worry. It's useless even if you worry. With such an ancient ruin appearing, even if those people use their fastest speed, even if they use some trump card or secret technique, they will still rush over. They haven't shown up yet because the ruin hasn't been completely opened." Su Yan said in shock, "Senior brother, you mean that they've all arrived?" Su Yun looked in a direction and said calmly, "Of course they've arrived, and there are quite a few of them. However, don't worry. What should be ours will be ours. We'll fight for it with our strength. The Great Light Temple is not afraid of anyone. Master Su Yun is indeed domineering." A mocking voice rang out. Demonic clouds surged in the distance. Dong Huang Tai, the moon-worshipping cult saintess, and 3 moon-worshipping cult god magi had arrived together. This was almost 1/3 of the entire moon-worshipping cult's strength. Seeing Dong Huang Tai arrive, Su Yan immediately snorted coldly. For both sides that had just finished the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths, it would be strange if Su Yan treated the other party nicely. Dong Huang Tai said with a faint smile, "It seems like everyone doesn't welcome me." Su Yun said calmly, "Your moon-worshipping cult's injuries have all healed. Last time, more than half of the 9 god magi died. This time, the few behind you are all newly selected. Aren't you afraid that they will also die in the ruin and your moon-worshipping cult won't even be able to gather 9 god magi?" During the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths, Su Yun was the only one who was qualified to be Dong Huang Tai's opponent. Only he would dare to say such words to Dong Huang Tai. As for the 3 god magi that Dong Huang Tai brought with him, other than Shan Gui, the rest had come in later. What Su Yun said was not wrong. Dong Huang Tai laughed coldly and said, "Master Su Yun, you better think about whether your Great Light Temple can gather the first seats of the 6 martial academies. You can't even protect the ruin you discovered at your own doorstep. Your Great Light Temple is going to be a joke this time." Chapter 809. Just as Dong Huang Tai and Su Yun were exchanging meaningless words, Chu Xiu and the rest of the Hidden Devil clan also arrived. Because it was just in time for the Hidden Devil clan's meeting, including Wei Shuya, the Hidden Devil clan sent 4 true Fire Spirit Refinement Realm cultivators. Apart from Wei Shuya, one of them was the Scarlet Devil sect master, Evil Lord Scarlet Moon Qin Chaoxian. This person was a tall middle-aged man in a blood-red robe. Moreover, he had a square face and a righteous expression. Just by looking at his appearance, people would believe that he was a hero of the righteous path. It was very difficult to imagine that he was actually the sect master of the Crimson Devil sect. The other person was an old man wearing a black Daoist robe. He was Earth Devil Magician, Umoya. When Mei Qinglian introduced him to Chu Xiu, she said that he was a famous grave-digging demon. 90% of his cultivation came from digging graves. In his life, he had dug up the tombs of countless ancient experts and ancestors of some large sections. He had collected all kinds of martial arts. It was said that his biggest dream was to dig up the Storm Sword Tomb. It was a huge tomb that hid countless strong sword cultivators. Of course, Umoya was just thinking about it. If he did it in reality, he would be looking for death. The last person was an old man who was dressed sloppily and wore colorful clothes. He did not look like someone from the Central Plains. He was Ghost Dragon Cave Master, Wuma Mermaid. He was one of the most orthodox disciples of the Kunlun Devil cult. He was the disciple of a branch of the Kunlun Devil cult in West Chu. Later on, when the Kunlun Devil cult was destroyed, the branch in West Chu withstood the pressure. However, it changed its name and dared not say that it was a branch of the Kunlun Devil cult anymore. Instead, it changed its name to Ghost Dragon Cave, which was Wuma Mermaid's branch. Seeing so many people from the Hidden Devil clan, Su Yan could not help but frown. However, Su Yun did not pay attention to the others. He only looked deeply at Chu Xiu. Su Du did not come this time. He was in seclusion in the Great Light Temple. The battle with Yuan Tianfang was also beneficial to Su Du, so he was also in seclusion to digest the experience brought to him by that battle. However, before he went into seclusion, Su Du came to see him personally and told him about Chu Xiu. From Su Du's point of view, the entire Hidden Devil clan was nothing to worry about. They were already at the end of their rope. However, Chu Xiu's existence was more threatening than the entire Yinma clan. His existence was equivalent to the morning sun rising in the east. When Chu Xiu really stood at the peak like the morning sun, would the Jianghu welcome another scene of demonic power that covered the sky? Su Du rarely evaluated a person seriously. Hence, this was the first time Su Yun had taken Chu Xiu seriously. He had never paid much attention to this junior martial artist who had risen to fame in the pugilistic world. Feeling that Su Yun was staring at him, Chu Xiu felt a little uneasy. It did not feel good to be stared at by a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse. Chu Xiu thought that Su Yun was weighing whether or not he should reveal that he and Su Du had joined forces to kill Yuan Tianfang. However, Chu Xiu was not afraid. This matter had already passed. Su Du had already advanced to the 10th powerhouse on the wind cloud list. If the Great Light Temple revealed the truth, it would be a slap in the face. Why didn't you refute it back then? Moreover, many parties were about to enter the ruins to fight for it. Since Su Yun had said this, Chu Xiu could say that Su Yun was deliberately provoking them. At that moment, Donghuang Tai saw that the Hidden Devil clan had arrived. He greeted them and breathed a sigh of relief. Ever since the last great battle between the Righteous Devil clan and the Hidden Devil clan, the relationship between the Bright Devil clan and the Moon-worshipping clan had eased a lot. Both sides also knew that although they were not of one mind, only the other party could save people in the face of a life-or-death crisis. As the Bright Devil clan and the Hidden Devil clan appeared at the same time, the forces that had been hiding in the dark stopped hiding and appeared one after another. The three main Taoist sects arrived at almost the same time. The sect leader of the real martial arts sect, Sage Xianxian, Lu Changlu, had arrived with several martial Dao masters. The Chunyang Dao sect had sent the leader of the Six Temple Guardian Sage, Chang Yunzi, along with Chunyang Dao sect's little martial uncle, Shi Yunzi, and several old Taoists. The others could not help but secretly shake their heads when they saw that the people from Chunyang Dao sect had white hair, except for Shi Yunzi. The Chunyang Dao sect had a strong foundation and had a lot of powerhouses. However, they were all from the previous generation, or even the generation before that. In the past few decades, how many young people from the Chunyang Dao sect had come up with? Apart from Shi Yunzi, there was almost no one else. The strength of a sect could not be supported by one person. The Chunyang Dao sect had indeed declined. The current generation was still doing well, but the next generation was really in danger. The people from Longhu Mountain were Thunder God, Xian Longzi and Zhang Chengzhen. Even in Longhu Mountain, many people thought that Xian Longzi was a lunatic. However, it was undeniable that his talent was top-notch in the Taoist Master Mansion. After not seeing him for a while, he had actually stepped into the true fire spiritual refinement state too. This attracted everyone's attention. Seeing the people from the Taoist Master Mansion, Donghuang Tai could not help but sneer, the people from the Taoist Master Mansion speak like a fart. Who was the one who said that they would seal the mountain for a year? Xian Longzi snorted, now that Chengzhen and I have been expelled from the Taoist Master Mansion, we are naturally not considered as people of the Taoist Master Mansion. Can't we? Donghuang Tai was instantly speechless, but there was nothing he could do. A promise would only be kept if it was necessary. Back then, the Taoist Master Mansion had indeed said that they would seal the mountain for a year. In fact, that was also a tacit understanding between Yi Shaonan and the old Taoist master. Neither Yi Xiaonan nor the old Taoist master wanted to kill him. In the end, Yi Xiaonan won. Therefore, sealing the mountain for a year actually meant that the Taoist master mansion would no longer care about the moon-worshipping cult, and the moon-worshipping cult would not go all out to kill the Taoist master mansion. Both sides had a tacit understanding to avoid mutual destruction. If Yi Xiaonan had really displayed the strength that Dugu Weiwei had, which could rival the martial arts world, then the old Taoist master would probably have fought him to the death. Therefore, the Taoist master mansion had sealed the mountain for a year because they did not care about the moon-worshipping cult. Now that such an important relic had appeared, how could the Taoist master mansion just watch from the sidelines? Although Xian Longzi's excuse was a bit ridiculous, it made sense. As long as he waited until the matter was over, he would be taken back by the Taoist master mansion. After the three great Taoist sects, another large Buddhist sect, the Subodhi Monastery, also sent people. Although the Subodhi Monastery had also made a vow to seal the mountain for a year, Dragon Tiger Mountain did not take it seriously, let alone the Subodhi Monastery. Therefore, Donghuang Tai did not say much this time. The Subodhi Monastery had sent an old monk named Jingchan Jizang. He only wore a simple yellow monk robe and was barefooted, but no one dared to look down on him. The Chunyang Dao sect had sent old Taoist priests, which was a sign of weakness to others. However, no one dared to look down on the old monk sent by the Subodhi Monastery. Everyone knew that the older the monks of the Subodhi Monastery were, the more terrifying they were. Their young disciples would not even appear in the pugilistic world. Jingchan Jizang greeted Su Yun in slightly choppy Central Plains Chinese before standing there motionlessly. However, Chu Xiu had a feeling that when Jingchan Jizang swept his gaze at him, it was filled with intense killing intent. That killing intent was released inadvertently, and Chu Xiu could guarantee that it was only targeted at him. However, on careful thought, Chu Xiu realized that he had a grudge with the Great Radiance Monastery, but he really had no grudge with the Subodhi Monastery. He had never even seen a disciple of the Subodhi Monastery. Why did the other party want to kill him? Chu Xiu asked Lu Jianghe, "Did you sense that old monk's killing intent just now?" Chu Xiu was worried that he had sensed wrongly. Had he been too sensitive recently? Lu Jianghe's psyche was attached to Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu could sense it, he should be able to sense it as well. Lu Jianghe chuckled and said, "Your senses are right. That old monk does want to kill you. Chu Xiu, you have to be careful." Although the Great Radiance Monastery is famous in the pugilistic world, the truly terrifying ones are the old monks of the Subodhi Monastery. They are typical people who don't talk much. Ordinary people can't accept their ascetic life. Therefore, none of the people who came out of the Subodhi Monastery are normal. Chu Xiu nodded gently. He did not look at Jingchan Jizang, but a hint of vigilance rose in his heart as he paid attention to the old monk. At that moment, Lu Fengxian, who was standing next to Chu Xiu, felt that something was wrong with Chu Xiu. He could not help but ask, "Brother Chu, what's wrong?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's nothing, Brother Lu. Be careful when you enter later. Don't fight head-on." Lu Fengxian had stepped into the martial Dao realm. Although he did not belong to any sect, he could enter the ruins because of his relationship with Chu Xiu. Lu Fengxian smiled and said, "I can still run if I can't beat them. It's not a shameful thing." To be honest, Lu Fengxian did not care much about his reputation. Right at this moment, another group of people came over. Chu Xiu's gaze was immediately attracted over, because this time, he actually saw a familiar person. There were only two people this time. One of them was a middle-aged man wearing a black robe with a lifelike azure dragon embroidered on it. This person carried a bone-chilling killing intent. As soon as he appeared, it was as if the temperature of the entire place had dropped by a few degrees. The most eye-catching thing was his eyes, which were filled with incomparable arrogance and madness. This person was the head of the Blue Dragon Society, Crescent Green Dragon, Bu Tian Nan, who was ranked 7th on the leaderboard. He was the world's #1 killer, the #1 assassin, and an out-and-out lunatic. At that moment, Chu Xiu's attention was not on Butiannan, but on the person behind him. The person behind Butiannan was the former Blue Dragon Society's Northern Yen Heavenly Sin branch leader, Duan Tianlang, who had tricked Chu Xiu and chased him for thousands of miles. Chapter 8:10. Chu Xiu was not a very magnanimous person. On the contrary, he was actually a very vengeful person. Along the way, there were very few people who could scheme against Chu Xiu so miserably, and Duan Tianlang was one of them. The former Heavenly Sin branch master was indeed a character. He could be described as vicious, and his means were strange. In his eyes, no one was as important as his own future, so no matter how much potential Chu Xiu showed, he would use Chu Xiu as bait to cheat the Blood Jade Exquisite Dragon. Of course, this person might not necessarily be Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu did not join the Heavenly Sin branch, then this person would be Tangya. But in the end, Chu Xiu had never forgotten about this matter, but Duan Tianlang was far away in the Blue Dragon Society, so he couldn't find trouble with the other party. And last time, Chu Xiu also heard from Mu Zi that this Duan Tianlang was quite capable. As soon as he stepped into the real pellet state, he became one of the 5 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. Although the ranking of the 7 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society did not represent their strength, it could represent their status in the Blue Dragon Society. Duan Tianlang became one of the 5 dragon heads, and this time when the ruins opened, Butiannan did not bring anyone, but he brought Duan Tianlang. This could already explain Duan Tianlang's status. To be precise, it was his position in Butiannan's heart. Chu Xiu smiled at Duan Tianlang and said, "Sir Branch Master, I don't know if you still remember me?" Duan Tianlang gritted his teeth and said, "Of course I remember, even if you turn into ashes, I will remember." On the surface, Duan Tianlang was gritting his teeth, but in fact, there was a trace of horror in the depths of his eyes. Of course, Duan Tianlang would not forget Chu Xiu. It should be said that he had never forgotten Chu Xiu. He was even able to reach this step thanks to Chu Xiu. Although Duan Tianlang had failed to kill Chu Xiu, he managed to kill a Hall Master of the White Tiger Hall and successfully returned to the Azure Dragon Society's headquarters. Not only that, he even managed to sneak into Butiannan's side. At that time, Duan Tianlang didn't take Chu Xiu seriously. In his opinion, Chu Xiu was just a small character who took his Blood Jade Exquisite Dragon. Although it was a pity to lose the Blood Jade Exquisite Dragon, it was a blessing in disguise to be able to return to the Blue Dragon Society headquarters. However, as Chu Xiu became more and more famous in the pugilistic world, Duan Tianlang became anxious when he heard that he was the successor of the Hidden Devil faction. Chu Xiu was not dead, and he had reached this point. He would definitely seek revenge in the future. So under this pressure, Duan Tianlang cultivated harder and harder, and he even tried his best to cater to Butiannan. In the end, he also reached the real pellet state, and he also became one of the 5 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. However, his results were nothing compared to Chu Xiu's. Even the current Chu Xiu could kill the existence of the real fire spirit refinement state. He was no longer on the same level as Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang was a ruthless person who judged others by himself. He would naturally bring Chu Xiu into himself, thinking that Chu Xiu would definitely come to him for revenge. Of course, he was right. Chu Xiu was even more vicious and merciless than he had imagined. So over the years, Duan Tianlang had even been living in fear. One could imagine how much pressure Chu Xiu brought to him. Butiannan glanced at Chu Xiu, then at Duan Tianlang. He suddenly smiled and said, "This kid is the one you betrayed back then. You didn't expect him to be stronger than you now?" Some of the details of Chu Xiu's early years had been revealed by wind-sweeping tower. His experience as an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society naturally couldn't be hidden from others. At this time, hearing Bu Tiannan's words, Duan Tianlang quickly smiled awkwardly and said, "You also know that this matter." However, before Duan Tianlang's words were finished, he was interrupted by Bu Tiannan. Bu Tiannan looked straight at Chu Xiu and said, "Chu Xiu, you used to be a member of the Blue Dragon Society. I know you feel wronged. How about this, I kill Duan Tianlang and you join the Blue Dragon Society. I will give you the position of the second dragon head. What do you think?" Duan Tianlang was so scared that his face instantly turned pale. He couldn't tell whether what Bu Tiannan said was true or just a joke. Even though he had served Bu Tiannan for a long time, he still couldn't figure out what was going on in his head. At this time, Wei Shuya said with a gloomy look, "Bu Tiannan, you're very bold to poach people from the Hidden Devil clan." Bu Tiannan laughed and said, "Old Wei, don't be angry. A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. This kid has no chance of developing in your Hidden Devil clan. A bunch of old people are about to die, yet they still refuse to give up their positions. Look at how generous I am, I directly gave him the position of the second dragon head." This big dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society really didn't know how to speak. He was really arrogant. After hearing his words, not only Wei Shuya, but Qin Chaoxian and the other two from the Scarlet Drill Devil sect also had a dark expression on their faces. So in their Hidden Devil clan, they were all old farts who didn't want to give up their positions to the young? Before Wei Shuya and the others could say anything, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in? Let's not talk about whether I'm a good bird or not. Big dragon head, you're not a good piece of wood." This Duan Tianlang betrayed his subordinates and is ruthless. He used such a person and put him in an important position. This will make many of our brothers feel bitterly disappointed. Big dragon head is a good bird that chooses a good tree to nest in. It will be hard to convince others. Moreover, as far as I know, the second dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society, Duan Xianxia, has been with you for a lifetime. He has done his best to stabilize the internal affairs of the Blue Dragon Society for you. In the end, you want to kick him down with just one sentence and let me be the second dragon head. But who knows if you won't easily kick me down next time and let someone else be the second dragon head. As soon as Chu Xiu said this, Bu Tiannan's face instantly darkened. Although that extreme killing intent was invisible and intangible, it made Bu Tiannan feel like a bitingly cold winter. There was even water vapor condensing around Bu Tiannan. However, the next moment, that killing intent disappeared without a trace. Bu Tiannan suddenly laughed and said, "Boy, you're very interesting. But you have to think carefully. If you refuse me this time, then you have no fate with the Blue Dragon Society anymore. Duan Tianlang is one of the 5 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. If you want to kill him, you have to go through me first. In short, if you kill him, I will kill you. In this life, you won't have a chance to take revenge." Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "No, I feel that I have a fate with the Blue Dragon Society." Bu Tiannan didn't say anything. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Duan Tianlang, who was pale with fright. He slapped Duan Tianlang and made him stagger. He scolded, "Trash. I was just joking. Look at you. You're really embarrassing me." Duan Tianlang covered his head. He was angry but didn't dare to say anything. It should be said that he didn't even dare to be angry. How could he know if Bu Tiannan was serious or just joking? In the past, this big dragon had started to kill people while laughing. This kind of thing was not uncommon. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and carefully looked at Bu Tiannan. To be honest, this person was also a legendary figure in the Jianghu. It was definitely not easy for him to go from a small assassin to where he was today. However, Bu Tiannan's personality was somewhat unpredictable. Using a person like Duan Tianlang could be considered to be a poor judgment of people. The second dragon head, Duan Xianxia, who had followed him for a lifetime and was conscientious, could be considered to be cold-hearted. Back then, because of the destruction of the heavenly sin branch, he dared to go to the Great Light Temple alone to demand an explanation. He even dared to make a move. He could be considered to be extremely crazy. But today, Chu Xiu saw Bu Tiannan's behavior. He was simply temperamental. Such a person was indeed worthy of being called a madman. If he wanted to kill Duan Tianlang, he had to think of a way to avoid this person. The crowd waited for a few more hours. The other sects also arrived one after another. Among the 5 major sword sects, Shen Baochen, who had forgotten about the sword hut, and Yan Ji, who had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm, came together. In the battle of the righteous and demonic path on Floating Jade Mountain, after Yan Ji lost the murderous weapon, the Abyss, his cultivation actually rose and unexpectedly stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm. On the other hand, the hidden sword mountain villa's villa master, Cheng Tingshan, came. He carried a seemingly ordinary iron box on his back, but it definitely contained the treasured weapons of the hidden sword mountain villa. The hidden sword mountain villa had actually gone to extremes these past few years. They placed too much emphasis on swords and neglected people. They did not know that for warriors, swords were only weapons that were held in their hands. However, the hidden sword mountain villa had put the cart before the horse. On the West Chu side, Chen Qingdi came alone. This time, he did not bring Xie Xiaolu. The scale of this relic was no longer suitable for warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm to explore. Only martial masters had the right to enter. Far away in the South Sea, the low-profile the 6th demon sect sent its sect master, Yi Bushuan, in person. When he saw Donghuang Tai, Wei Shuya, and the others from the hidden devil clan, he greeted them. The 6th demon sect was neither a bright devil nor a hidden devil. Both sides were able to get along well. Even the northern Yen side had an important figure. Eastern Mountain Army's great general, Quang Tu, Beigong Bailey. On the 9 Great Clan side, the Gao Ping, Lu clan, and Sun clan's ancestor came with a few clansmen. Compared to them, the Shangshui Ying clan had actually sent very few people. However, their strength was great. It was actually Ying Sanshu from the Ying clan and Ying Bailu. The current number 1 on the world list, Ying Sanshu, although he looked like an ordinary middle-aged man without the slightest expression, only those who were from the same era as him knew how terrifying Ying Sanshu was. In the past, when he was ranked on the Longhu list, he was known to be invincible below the Grand Master. He was even more prestigious than Zhang Chengzhen of this generation. Of course, that was also because there were no monsters like Chu Xiu, Zong Xian, and Fang Qi Shao in his generation. When Ying Sanshu stepped into the real pellet state and was ranked on the world list, he was known to be invincible below the true fire spirit refinement state. There were only 3 defeats in his life, so he was also known as Ying Sanshu. Although this person had not fought for more than 20 years, his power was still there. Even with Su Yun's strength, who had just experienced the war between the righteous and demonic factions, Feng Manlu did not dare to rank him above Ying Sanshu. Chapter 8:11. More than 10 practitioners of the spiritual refinement state of true fire had gathered around the ruins. This scale was second only to the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths. The warriors of the Xuanwu Gate responsible for breaking the formation felt pressured. Wei Shuya frowned slightly. After the great battle, he thought that the Diabolists could finally raise their heads. Only now did he understand that the only one who could raise their heads was the moon-worshipping sect, because they had a strong practitioner like Yi Shaonan. Although the Yinma clan had not suffered any damage, their strength was still there. Among the practitioners of the Jianghu who kept coming, there were very few who belonged to the Diabolists. Most of them were from the righteous path. The gap between the righteous and demonic paths was still very large. At that moment, another group of people from the devil path finally arrived. However, the people from the Immortal clan didn't have any good expressions towards them. In fact, their attitude was even worse than the people from the righteous path because they were from the evil extreme sect. Compared to enemies, traitors were certainly more hateful. Only 2 people from the omniscient sect came. One was Xianxia, and the other was the leader of the omniscient sect, Evil King, Cultivation. In fact, in the Jianghu, especially in the eyes of other Diabolist sects, the omniscient sect did not have a good reputation. In their eyes, the omniscient sect was a traitor of the former Kunlun devil cult. Moreover, the omniscient sect was far away in the far north. Under the light of Buddha of the Great Light Temple, they could only be subservient and lick the moon-worshipping sect. They had no integrity or dignity at all. However, this evil king, Cultivation, had a rather good appearance. It was the exact opposite of the omniscient sect. Although Cultivation was not young, he still retained the appearance of a middle-aged man in his 40s. Most importantly, he was very handsome. When he was young, he was as handsome as Lu Fengxian, Ing Bailu, and the others. Even though he was older now, he had a mature charm. Lord Donghuang, long time no see. Cultivation greeted Donghuang Tai with a smile. However, Donghuang Tai's reaction was extremely cold. He only nodded slightly. Donghuang Tai actually looked down on the evil Zenith sect. They were too good at playing tricks. The omniscient sect had indeed contributed to the last war between the righteous and demonic paths. They had sent many warriors, and even the heir of the omniscient sect, Xianxia, had been sent to West Chu. However, Cultivation had not come. The omniscient sect was clearly not going to bet everything on the moon-worshipping sect. Of course, there was nothing wrong with this. After all, there were very few people in the Jianghu who would stake everything on a single throw. It was understandable that the evil Pole sect would hold back, but it wouldn't be easy for them to do so. Cultivation did not mind Donghuang Tai's attitude. He only smiled faintly, appearing extremely gentlemanly. However, Qin Chaoxian from the Crimson Demonic sect sneered, "Cultivation, you're quite bold to bring out your successor who hasn't reached the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Aren't you afraid that he'll die in there?" Cultivation smiled and said, "Everyone has their own fate. How can the younger generation grow without going through trials and tribulations? You and I went through life and death when we were young. Which danger is not more dangerous than now? The elites on the Longhu list have already stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. It's a bit late for our omniscient sect's disciples to enter the Jianghu. If we don't work hard to catch up, how can we succeed?" Xianxia, who was standing next to Cultivation, snorted and said, "Sect Master, if you hadn't suppressed me for so long, I'm afraid I would have reached the real pellet state long ago. I really don't care about the so-called Longhu list. Fang Qi Shao has been surpassed by several people one after another. What's the point of being the first on the Longhu list? The next time I'm on the list, I won't appear on the Longhu list, but the Fengyun list." Chu Xiu squinted at Xianxia. This guy is actually a little cute, silly and cute. Nowadays, there aren't many people who are so blindly confident. He remembered that Xianxia, as the trump card secretly cultivated by the omniscient sect, was indeed amazing when he first appeared. He cultivated the beastkin technique as a human and even refined the blood dragon's Niden. It was a pity that there were too many monsters in this generation of the Jianghu. Xianxia's original goal was Zhang Qingzhen, but what happened in the end? Zhang Qingzhen had long left him in the dust. Later, Chu Xiu, Zhong Xian, and others also stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm one after another, leaving him far behind. As a result, Xianxia still looked down on Fang Qi Shao and wanted to step directly into the Fengyun list. This was a bit whimsical. On this generation's Longhu list, there were only 3 people who could enter the Fengyun list after leaving the Longhu list: Zhang Qingzhen, Chu Xiu, and Zong Xian. Even Ing Bailu couldn't do this. It was extremely difficult for Yi Tianxia, who had just suffered a setback in the fluttering snow city in the extreme north, to do this. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly came: "The Longhu list's number 1 is boring? I also think this thing is boring, so I'll give it to you." Everyone looked into the distance and saw Sword King City's true fire spirit refinement state powerhouse Jiannan King, Dugu Li, coming with Fang Qishao. Looking at the aura on Fang Qishao at this time, he had also stepped into the real pellet state. Chu Xiu was not surprised that Fang Qishao had stepped into the real pellet state. His talent and potential were not weaker than Lu Fengxian and Ing Bailu. He was surpassed by them one after another. In addition to this guy being a bit lazy, it was more of a coincidence. If there was no stimulation from the Yu Palace, probably Lu Fengxian and Ing Bailu wouldn't have broken through so quickly. They would have to wait until the conditions were right. The Sword Awakening Salamander of Sword King City was casually carried on his shoulder by Fang Qishao. He squinted at Yi Tianxia and sneered, "Little Che, do you really think those on the Longhu list are all vegetarians? I let Ing Bailu and the others break through first. That's me being modest. If you're not convinced, how about we fight now?" Yi Tianxia's face turned white and red. Just now, he was still looking down on Fang Qishao, but in the blink of an eye, Fang Qishao had already stepped into the martial Dao Grand Master realm. This was quite a slap in the face. However, for the sake of his face, Yi Tianxia still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Xingbei Xian. He chuckled and said, "Young hero Fang, don't mind it. My disciple is young and impetuous. He doesn't know the rules." Since Xingbei Xian said so, Fang Qishao didn't continue to embarrass Yi Tianxia. He just leaned over to Chu Xiu and winked. "What I hate the most in my life is those who are more handsome than me. How can someone be so handsome at this age?" Lu Fengxian came over and said, "Brother Fang, are you talking about me?" Fang Qishao pushed Lu Fengxian aside with a depressed expression. "It's none of your business." Chu Xiu ignored Fang Qishao's tricks. He just asked curiously, "You just stepped into the real pellet state, don't you need to retreat for a period of time? Sword King City just let you out?" Fang Qishao shrugged and said, "It's a matter of time, why do I need to retreat? Those old guys are probably afraid that the people behind me will surpass me again, so they can't wait to pull me out for a walk." As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Qishao found that his choice of words seemed to be a little wrong. "What do you mean by walk? Walk by myself?" Just as he wanted to change his words, Du Guli said with a gloomy face, "Come back. How can you be so impatient?" Fang Qishao shrugged helplessly and had to return to Du Guli's side obediently. In Sword King City, this person was the oldest and had the worst temper. Fang Qishao dared to provoke others, but he really didn't dare to provoke Du Guli. Of course, Du Guli asked Fang Qishao to come over not only to let him be more serious, but he also didn't want to see Fang Qishao get too close to Chu Xiu. After all, Chu Xiu was a demonic cultivator, and the righteous and demonic cultivators were irreconcilable. Although Sword King City's position was not as firm as Great Light Temple or Chunyang Dao sect, they couldn't let their disciples join the demonic cultivators. At this time, everyone who should be here had arrived. Everyone was waiting for the people of Xuanwu Gate to completely open the array. Pu Yangyi seized the opportunity and busied himself for a few more hours. Finally, the formation below blossomed with a dazzling radiance. He let out a long breath and said, "It's finally done. Everyone can enter." Just at this moment, an extremely powerful aura rapidly descended from the distance. A middle-aged cultivator wearing a tiger skin cloak with a trace of evilness on his face descended from the sky. He stood in the middle of the crowd in an extremely high-profile manner. After looking around, he chuckled and said, "Fortunately, I made it in time. It doesn't matter if it's meat or soup, it has to be hot. Everyone present frowned because they felt that this person was a bit unfamiliar. However, the aura on his body was extremely powerful. Even Dong Huangtai wouldn't underestimate him. However, there were only a few top powerhouses in the Jianghu. Who was this person who had suddenly appeared? Su Yun said in a deep voice, "May I ask who this benefactor is?" The middle-aged man chuckled and said, "Well said, I am Kuang Xieyue from Elysium." As soon as they heard the words, Elysium, everyone present immediately fell into a brief silence. Compared to other forces, Elysium was very troublesome. Any random divine general from Elysium was an expert among experts. They didn't expect that the appearance of this relic would actually alarm Elysium, a force that hadn't been in the Jianghu for a long time. It wasn't a good thing that such a strong competitor had come. At this time, Kuang Xieyue looked around and suddenly saw Chu Xiu. He laughed loudly and unexpectedly grabbed towards Chu Xiu without any warning. "Was it you who scared off Divine Lord Luo last time? I want to see what evil things you have on you. After I take them back, I'll have a good laugh at that guy." No one expected that Kuang Xieyue would make a move on such an occasion. Instantly, Chu Xiu felt as if he was being stared at by a terrifying existence. Devil Qi erupted from his body and blood shadows swirled around. He was ready to use all his strength to resist. However, at this time, Wei Shuya had already arrived in front of Chu Xiu. He snorted coldly and waved one hand. A giant devil Qi hand descended from the sky and blocked Kuang Xieyue's grab. "So what if you're a divine general of Elysium? Do you think my hidden devil lineage is dead?" You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.